Go.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Blue Sunday here on In the Blue Corner channel. Vince Lochisano here with you with the one and only Steve Katib, and welcome back to Chris Beach, back in the Bat Cave and in the control room. How are you, Beachy?
Good, thank you, Vince. It's been a crazy week in sport and a crazy week in football for some, depending on what outlook that you have. Nonetheless, we're here to wrap it up for all of you, and we'll go from there.
Yes, indeed, and we're privileged to have you here tonight, seeing you're normally playing cricket still at this time. And I believe you'll probably be missing for the next few weeks because of exactly that reason. But anyway, It's good to have you back, mate, and we'll be interested to hear your comments about the latest developments with the Australian cricket team and specifically the issue of Justin Langer resigning from his position as the coach of the Australian team. So time to get off the fence, time to stop getting all those splinters in your legs and give us an opinion.
No, Vince, I'm going to say this right now before we actually go into that subject. There was a very hot beach boy here when I found out about it. So I won't go into it too much just yet, but I'm giving you the warning now. I was not happy.
All right. Well, I think there's lots to talk about in sport. Of course, predominantly we are a channel that concentrates on the plight of the Carlton Football Club, both the men's and women's competition, and all of the other issues that go with Carlton. But so I think we'll probably start there, and then we'll get on to cricket and golf and soccer and all sorts of other sports. So, Steve, I think we might as well start off with the latest of our women's matches, which was this afternoon. And unfortunately, there's not really much to talk about in a positive light. Carlton, 1-6-12, beaten by Adelaide, last year's grand finalists, 7 goals, 9-51. A complete demolition job, especially in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. Very disappointing. Probably full credit to Adelaide, though. They're a very good side. So we're up against it, and I think it's not looking good for the coach. Albeit, I think that he hasn't had.
Why do
necessarily...
we go immediately to the coach? I mean, is it? Is it something that revolves around coaching and game plan and all that sort of thing, or does it go deeper than that? Does it go to our trades and our recruiting and our culture and our management around the Carlton Football Club?
I definitely think it does, but I'm only stating the obvious. The way we know it will probably play out, and he will be the fall guy for that. I'm almost certain of it now, Vince. Even though he has had some previous seasons that have been excellent beforehand, it's a disappointing situation, and I think that there's probably needs to be a whole review of that whole women's program at the moment, and I probably think that the board member responsible for that, Paddy Kinnersley, obviously will need to whether head that review, but also answer some questions as well on the AFLW program, because we've certainly lost a lot of ground there. We had developed a very strong culture and a strong team, and there's got to be questions asked year after year after year now, players leaving, and they've gone on to flourish at other clubs, not actually then in turn being able to attract the talent to replace those players like for like. And then from a development perspective, not necessarily having a great nursery ground, albeit it's a pretty challenging competition. It's a short competition. It's difficult. There's a lot of player movement. They're not full-time professionals like, obviously the men are. But nonetheless, there's major questions. And I think, Paddy Kinnersley and the whole subcommittees that head up the AFLW program need to obviously start looking at themselves, opposed to sacking the coach. But we do know that at Carlton, that's what we're really good at, is scapegoating coaches, aren't we, Vince?
Yeah. Did you see the game at all, Beachy?
I was there today, actually, Vince.
Okay. I won't ask you what your opinion was because you just took a mouthful of something.
Well, I mean, past that, but it's okay. You can ask. Long story short,
what's your view of what happened this afternoon?
I won't waste too much time on it because, as far as I'm concerned, and I said this to Steve before we went to air, Adelaide have won this competition for 2 times as it is, and they are probably one of the best sides in this competition. As much as I hate to say it, sure, we've had players come back, we've had players go due to health and safety protocols, we've had players leave the club to other clubs. That should be no excuse. You're playing at the highest level for women's sport, and you need to be playing on your A game against sides like Adelaide. Otherwise, that scoreline, like you saw today, will keep happening week in, week out. Now, we've got Fremantle next week. Of course, the venue is supposed to be confirmed later, but we'll work that out as we go.
So Chris, you're saying that the players are probably, the responsibility sits with the players in the main, or are you saying it's a mix, or where would you actually place the onus of improvement on? Who would you place that to?
I would place it on everybody, players and coaches, because you're at the highest level, right, for every week. Now the side changes week to week. I get that. The thing is, though, you're there because the coaches have picked you there to play a game that you're supposed to be getting ready for week in, week out. It might sound like I'm just rambling here, but there is a point to this. Right? Adelaide have won this twice, this competition twice. If you're not on your A game from the first ball up in this instance, then you're going to get killed. And that's what happened today.
Yep.
Well, Carlton's better players, for I guess, for the sake of mentioning at least a few positives. I think the biggest positive was the return to form and return to the field. In fact, after 1 year out with an ACL injury, was Mimi Hill, number 10. She had 26 possessions, a game high, 13 kicks and 13 hand passes. Also laid, 4 tackles and 3 clearances. So it was a comprehensive performance by her. I think she can hold her head up high. Maddie Prasparkas, 23 possessions, although only 7 of them kicks. So, she's got to be careful that she doesn't become a pure clearance player via hand passing out. I know she's probably our inside midfielder, a little bit like Greg Williams, but she's also got to get boot to ball as well, and that's probably where she could be a lot more dangerous if she was able to get a few more kicks around the ground. Maddie also laid 7 tackles, in fact. So both of those 2 girls can hold their heads up high. And I thought Gabby Pound, number 6, the one with the headband, it actually really looks like Cade Simpson, female version of Cade Simpson with the long sleeves, number 6. She played a very good game too, 16 kicks off the half back line. And also, I guess, honourable mentions to Grace Egan, number 1, with 18 possessions. Abby McKay, also 18 possessions. And I thought young Trudgeon in the back line, first-year player for us, did quite well. In fact, the last few weeks she's actually held her own down there in the back line. But, there was also some pretty quiet performances today. I thought probably the most... if I can be a little controversial, the one I think really has been letting the side down in the last few weeks, to be honest, is Darcy Vescio. She's sadly out of form.
Yeah, no.
Did I just say she's sadly out of form? I'm supposed to say they. I'm sorry about that. I just can't get used to all that.
No,
But anyway,
don't worry.
Darcy is sadly out of form. 3 kicks, 3 hand passes, didn't hit the scoreboard, doesn't chase, doesn't tackle, only had the 1 tackle for the day. That's not, to me, that's not acceptable.
She's
That's
a better
not good
player than
enough.
that. She's
She
a better
needs to
player than
lift, or
that.
otherwise
Yeah.
she really runs the risk of being dropped. Because at the moment, I don't think she's posing any sort of danger to the opposition, and she's not contributing.
No, there's nothing controversial about that, Vince. 2 players I think that you failed to mention just briefly, and I'm going to quickly touch on them at the moment, is Lala Wifi, number 8, and the captain, Kes Harrington, number 9. Now,
they both try hard in the back line, don't they?
And now they are our pillars down back. And if it wasn't for them playing today, that scoreline, I think, probably would have been worse than what it actually could have been at the end of the game today.
Yeah. Yeah, look, Courtney Jones, who's probably been one of our best players in the first few weeks, number 22. She's kicked a few goals. She had a quiet one today. I think she only got a point from her 8 kicks. So she was a bit quieter today than usual. Even Nicola Stevens, number 21, she's normally a bit more dangerous around the ground and also in front of goals. She only got the 4 kicks, 7 hand passes, but didn't hit the scoreboard. So I think there's a lot of players, unfortunately, out of form, and there's too much being left to too few.
Yeah, that's a fair call, Vince. Now, I've just noticed a question here from Sandra McDonald. Good evening to you, Sandra. She's asking, why are we not using the VFLW as a feeder? That is because, and this is my belief, that we are not in season for that yet, and we've only just had the fixture released. So, it could be a little while before we get that underway, and then we could probably go from there.
Mm. Well, don't forget, you got 4 more teams to make it the full 18 next year. So I don't know where all this talent pool is going to come from. There's a lot of girls getting games that you'd have to question the standard that's being produced out there at the moment. There's a lot of games that are, 3 goals to 2 goals by the end of the game. It's not great football to watch, but I think that's going to be a bit of an issue going forward. Where does the AFLW competition source its players from, and what sort of development's taking place behind the scenes to bring up more players through the system that can actually play a decent brand of football? Because to pay $10 to get into to watch a match like that, I don't think too many people will do it.
Vince, I would question the development, and obviously, and it's just from my knowledge. I think money has been poured in by councils to equip, the local amenities to have, changing rooms that accommodate both AFL and AFLW, to more games being played. That's an infrastructure thing. I think from I think the question you're asking is all about the talent pathways and the talent itself. That relies on human IP. That relies on coaches. That relies on programs. That relies on an investment in human resources, not just a building that a council can put up and potentially tick a box to say they've got inclusiveness on their in their infrastructure spend. It's really all about the actual coaching itself and the programs. That I fail to see. I see a lot of those teams that are out there playing, and I see them on a weekend at the park. See them coached by volunteers that are probably got dobbed in to do the job reluctantly, right? Volunteering their time. But I don't see it as a professional. I don't see the accredited coaches, if you like, from the Australian Coaching Council, without going into all of how that works. Because
it's a bit like junior footy, the dads and all of that, start volunteering to be coaches, and they do the best they can, but you wouldn't call it professional coaching, would you?
And that's the investment required, Vince. It's not just an investment. I know we could do a whole new show on this whole nother show on this whole topic itself. But it's not just building changing rooms or having the park available, for women's and men's games. It's a combination of all of the coaching and the IP that's required. I don't see that. I could be wrong, but that's just my view.
Yep. No, I'll go along with you. All right. Well, looks like the team is in dire straits. They're sitting on 1 win and is it 4 losses now? I think it's 4 losses. Beachy?
Yep. 1 and 4 with a game against Fremantle to come, who are currently playing.
Well, Fremantle got upset today by North Melbourne. I mean, they were, when I say upset, I say upset because Fremantle hadn't lost the game up until now. Eventually, probably most teams will eventually. But 26-16 down there in Hobart. It was a great performance by North Melbourne, a very gutsy one. But their defence held up really well to keep Fremantle to only 2 goals for a game is a pretty good effort. But, Fremantle will be smarting after that loss, and I think they'll be ready and raring to come after us next week if we end up playing them over in Perth. There's still some question marks on that, but I think that the AFLW competition are confident that they'll be able to fly Carlton and Collingwood in next week on a fly-in, fly-out basis into Perth and out of it straight after the game. So it looks like being Fremantle versus Carlton next week in WA and West Coast versus Collingwood. So Carlton right now 12th, or if you like, 3rd last on the AFLW ladder, having played 5 games, 1 win only over Geelong, and a pretty miserable percentage of only 51.8, which means that effectively we're conceding 2 points for every point that we kick. So not looking good, guys. We've only got West Coast and St Kilda underneath us. They've only played 4 matches and 3 matches respectively, so they've got a couple of matches in hand. Not inconceivable that if both those teams have a win, we could be damn near bottom of the ladder before you know it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And that's a position that this club that once had great power through your young eras here, gentlemen, is something that we do not want to be witnessing, because this is something that people my age and younger have been witnessing for the last 20 to 30 years.
Well, I think that the problem personally goes beyond Daniel Harford. Yes, there may be an issue with him and his game style. I don't know. But you can only coach what you've got. And I think that there's more questions that need to be asked of the recruiting department or list management department, if you like, when it comes to trading, recruiting, and development of our players. I just think our women's team are starting to show signs of the same sorts of issues that our men's team had in recent years. And I think we said it in the show last week, Steve, that maybe that review that Luke Sayers called upon last year for the men's team, maybe that should have been done both for the men's and the women's team, because I've got a funny feeling that there's cultural issues that go right through the club, not just the men's team.
Well, Vince, I mentioned earlier, right? Essentially, the president and the board members involved from a football subcommittee perspective relating to the AFLW program need to be held accountable as well. It's not appropriate just scapegoating the coach purely, because all you'll do is just keep repeating your mistakes. The definition of insanity, right? Essentially, you get a new coach and you're not setting them up for success because they're coming into an environment that's less than ideal.
Well, I think that brings us to the next topic, really, because this sort of segues into the whole issue of our AGM, our annual general meeting, coming up on the 22nd of February. Yep. And one of the 3 directors that's going up for election, or re-election in this case, is Paddy Kinnersley.
Yep.
Now, Paddy Kinnersley, I think, joined the board back in about 2018. I could be wrong.
Yep.
I think it was 2018. And
she replaced Kate Jenkins.
Yes. who was on the equal opportunity.
No, she's a Commonwealth Minister
Commission?
for she's now the Commonwealth Minister for there is a title and it escapes me. Essentially, it's diversity and she's
equal
been involved in that.
and all that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
she's been involved in the parliamentary reviews, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Paddy Kinnersley has been in charge, allegedly, or certainly overseeing the VFLW and AFLW programs at the club. She also oversees the program that was being, if you like, on display this afternoon, the Carlton Respects program. The girls were wearing their orange socks today. You've got to ask yourself, if Paddy Kinnersley's putting herself up for re-election, surely questions need to be asked about why she feels like she deserves another opportunity, because that side of our club has been going backwards.
Well,
now we were looking good probably when she came in, because I think we, from memory, were looking like I think we made a grand final maybe in 2018. I think
19.
I'm right in saying that against Adelaide.
19.
Oh, 19, was it? Okay, and then in 2020 we were looking like making a semi-final against North Melbourne, and then they shut down the competition because of COVID. They completely cancelled the rest of it. Last year we were touted as flag favourites and went backwards to the point where we didn't even make the finals. And now this year we look like we're really sunk. Only one win from 5 games, and looking like, you know, our chances of making finals are very forlorn. So you've got to ask yourself, why does Paddy Kinnersley deserve another opportunity on the board? Why should she get anyone's vote? And until she answers some questions about what's going on with those 2 programs, why else should she be there?
Vince, she won't be put up to answer questions. That's one. Okay? Absolutely 100%. And you know that. The club will hang half it out to dry and she'll be behind the scenes. Okay. Number 2, she would argue. Now, this depends on what you think is important. Not just you, Vince, any supporter, any member, I should say. She would argue that her remit has not just been on-field performance for football. Now, that would always be the argument of any board member, because let's be honest, the on-field performance of any
if being on the board was based on on-field performance, they all would have scattered years ago.
That's right. Sure. I'm just giving you the rhetoric.
Oh, dear.
I'm giving you the rhetoric back. Okay.
I know.
Okay. No. And I think it's important to
100%.
It's important to address this. This would be the response back. It's scripted. I've almost got it in my head, verbatim. She's overseen the community programs. Her remit's been to oversee the development of the new facility. So that's been her remit. And I believe there's been a people and culture element with David Campbell, but I'm not 100% sure. But that's another board member we can talk about another time. Not up for election this year. So out of 100, Vince, what do you think football performance should be ranked in overseeing a program? Considering those other elements I mentioned, would you say 80%? Would you say 50% based on the other elements of a portfolio? What would you say?
Well, look, ultimately, it's not a portfolio that revolves around income and expenditure and sponsorship and profit and loss and all that sort of thing. She's hardly responsible for anything to do with the bottom line. So it's all about promoting those issues such as, the Carlton Respects program, equality, diversity, rah. Yes, she probably does some of that, or it's done for her by the club, and she just oversees it as a board member.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's an on-field success that we should be measuring the performance of anyone on the board in a big way.
And that's
a lot bigger percentage than what it has been up until now.
Absolutely. And
so
I think
it should be, at least 2/3, 1/3 in favour of on-field performance. If the team's not performing on field and you've had your tenure and we're going backwards and you can't convince us as to why you should remain because things are going to turn around and show us how they're going to turn around and why they're going to turn around, well then what makes you think you just should be re-elected unopposed or re-elected without having to explain yourself or justify yourself?
So Vince, are you being crazy enough to say that all these other, shall we say, decoys that the board point to when we have another disappointing year are on field, whether that be female or male programs, football programs, e.g. the president's legacy, the previous president's legacy that he claims he left where Carlton is now out of debt. So that's the legacy. Don't worry about the fact that essentially they never made finals, let alone anything else. All of that stuff, I think, are nice to haves.
Distraction from the things that really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the primary thing is, and sure, you don't want it all to be on field and the club's broke. I get that. Of course, we need that off field element to it. But if you're overseeing highly unsuccessful football programs, then you get a couple of chances, but not continuous year after year after year where you can just talk about something else other than football as your success story to put up as a win. And then use diversions by sacking coaches, changing shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic, removing employees, putting more employees in, changing It doesn't work that way. No. Take the responsibility for your failures in your specific areas.
What can members do to bring about more accountability by board members before they go up for election? I mean, as you said, the club's not going to put her up to answer questions from members. They're not going to expose her to the failures that she has been presiding over as the board member responsible for AFLW. But if they just remain silent on it, what are members doing to bring this issue to the fore? If it's not for people like us, I guess, trying to bring it to their attention to say, hey, you got a board member here who's going up for re-election. This is her area of responsibility, and it's been failing and going backwards and getting worse. I guess the only other thing you can do is put up a candidate up against her and try and get as much publicity as you can for the other candidate and say this is why the other candidate will be better.
Do you think members understand? I'm not saying members are stupid. I don't mean it this way, but do you think members truly understand that they can question a board member that has that portfolio? I mean, I know that the football club does everything in its power to divert any attention away from any form of accountability whatsoever based on board members' portfolios, whether that be finance, whether that be football, whether that be the women's program of football, whether that be anything. The club do everything they can to divert that responsibility. I mean, wouldn't it be great if I had a magic wand, right, which I don't have, to get at every AGM to get each board member that's responsible for their subcommittee of their portfolio, if you like, whether that be, as I said, finance, football, whatever, to stand up and give a report on what's happened, how they felt it's gone, the wins, the losses, the successes, the failures, and then have members asking questions specifically about that portfolio and have them have to be accountable to answer them. Is that too much to ask? Surely
Clearly
not.
it is.
Absolutely
Clearly
it is.
because
Yeah.
they don't do it. See, a board that was conscious of their responsibility and willingly accountable for themselves being on the board would actually go out of their way to communicate to the members the truth, the real truth about everything, and be transparent and be honest and be accountable. But Carlton seems to be run by a board of directors that's more interested in coming up with strategies to make things look good when they're not. And that's been our problem for many, 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 many years.
So they'll cut the ribbon, Vince, on this new development, and everyone will say, and the honourable member for wherever in Victoria will open that facility.
Martin for sure.
I didn't want to say that. But anyway, okay, so he'll open it, right?
The minister for 801 deaths in hotel quarantine.
Let's just focus. Yeah. So he would, whichever minister it is, could be a premier, who knows? Federal or it could be federal or state. They will open this facility. The ribbon will be cut, and the story will be, isn't this great for our football program? Mind you, we're going out there. Players are leaving. The players that are coming in are worse. Most definitely, probably the culture isn't very good because you're not seeing 100% effort on the field at the moment, and you're getting beaten by half a dozen goals at home.
Yeah.
You're at the foot of the ladder, and you've got a beautiful facility, a shiny facility that you cut the ribbon on, and you're flying. No, you're not. You've got nothing other than a building. But look at the building over here that we've got. We just got 40 million for the government from it. Look at it. Have a look how great it is. That is not winning a game. And I think most members don't care as much about that building as they do, or that decoy strategy, as they do about the actual remit that board member has.
It's funny, I was going through some social media posts just the other day that go back just before Christmas, when the club announced that it made some sort of a profit of $1.28 million. And I thought, how's this all been tricked up? And all of the comments on this social media page were, who cares? Can we win a game of football, please? So I think the majority of members, by nature, don't really go into the politics. They don't really understand what happens at board level and how accountable they should be. And the awareness and knowledge and comprehension of what goes on and what should go on is very low in terms of engagement. I don't think the average member engages with all that anywhere near to the same extent as maybe you and I do. But
I don't think the club want them to, though, Vince.
Yeah, that's right, and they know. The benefit of running a football club board for this board is that they haven't got a captive audience in all of the issues that would show them up. All that these members want is on-field performance. At the end of the day, they don't even care if we got $5 million worth of debt, so long as we've got a couple of premiership cups in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And in fact, I've even had past players tell me, who cares about that? I don't care if we've got 5, 10 million in debt. As long as we win 2 or 3 flags in the next 10 years, I'm happy. I know even Beachy's never witnessed a premiership. You'd probably be happy with that, Beachy.
Well, I'm fortunate to even remember one, and I was a bloody toddler. I was 3 when we won in 1995. All right? Let that sink in, Vince. 3. I'm lucky.
That means you must be turning 30 sometime this year.
Yes, I am.
We'll have to celebrate the big 3-0 whenever that happens.
Well, that's not for another month yet, Vince, but we'll work
Okay,
something
it's
out.
not too far away.
Yeah,
Well, look,
it's
the point of the matter is, it's probably reflected, Steve, in the numbers that attend annual general meetings, for example. Now, we've got this one coming up. It's going to be done online, which, by the way, was the reason provided for cancelling the one in August, because they didn't think it was fair to make people go to an online general meeting. But now
I'll just interrupt. So, round one, full house at the football. Now, full house at an AGM is 150 people, and includes the cat and the dog that live at the club, and everything else. Essentially, that's what it is, right? That's what it would be, because they hold it in late February, so no one's interested. We've mentioned that, of course. So surely you can just have it in person. It would be fairer to people, wouldn't it? And people choose to come.
Any excuse not to have the gathering of people where they have the potential to be embarrassed by certain questions or the revelation of certain information in front of other people. So therefore, having it online where everyone's got to tune in, they've got to, I don't know, they're probably going to have to go into the Carlton website and click on something and be part of some live stream. That's going to benefit the board enormously by having a meeting done on that basis rather than people gathering in person. And it's probably, as you said last week, the only day of the year that they feel a little bit edgy because of what may come out or what may be disclosed or what questions may be asked of certain individuals.
So last year it was online, late February again. There was a delay of 25 minutes before the stream went up. Allegedly, it was a
That's
power
just to
play.
lose 80% of your audience, yeah?
Yeah, right. So 6:30 on a Monday night. You could imagine people are putting dinner on. They've got all sorts of other priorities, right?
Yeah.
They log in.
6:30, by the way, 6:30 p.m., right in the middle of dinner.
Yeah. Right. Log in, do what they need. So from memory, last year there were 4 questions. That's it. 4 questions. All answered. I would have thought that if there were 4 questions and they were provided questions, because that was the rule, you had to provide them prior, so they could vet them possibly.
So you've got to submit your question in advance.
Yes. So you were lucky to get, I reckon, if you had 50 people watching, you'd be absolutely lucky.
Are you guaranteed to have your question asked?
No.
Why not?
No.
Why
there
not?
may be themes.
When we have AGMs in person, anyone can get up and ask their question without notice to the chairman or whoever else he wants to direct it to. So why do questions have to be provided in advance and screened, and then they can decide whether they want to even pose the question, let alone answer it?
In defence of the club at last year's AGM, because there were 4 questions, they had to pad out the space, so they answered them all. So there you go. But anyway, that was what happened. So it definitely, I don't have the numbers, and the club probably won't share the numbers, but it definitely minimised the engagement. So you're doing everything you can as a club to engage with supporters, whether it be social media, website, be a member. We want to hear from you. Come to our shop, 20% off. This sale, that sale, communications here. Here's an interview from one of our players. But yet, when it's an AGM, we want it to occur like it almost never happened. It's a procedural thing that just goes like a ship in the night.
Yes, well, as I said, this board gives me the impression that it's doing everything it can to avoid accountability, to avoid the hard questions, and to hide away the board members that are not performing in their areas of responsibility.
Well, there's another one. You talk about board members, David Campbell. I mean, you look at all. I mean, and he's not up for election, right? And just
Not
as,
until
this is
next
just
year.
I'm just giving an example, and the only reason I raise this is because it's not like we're picking on Paddy Kinsley here, right? We're not doing that at all. We're just purely talking actually about remits. So David Campbell, people and culture, he's an HR recruiter, CEO of Ergon Zender, global, no stone unturned search company, right?
Yeah,
All
but
that
he's
sort
not good enough. Yeah, but he's not good enough to be on a panel of people that are there to select the next coach. Because when they selected Michael Voss, he wasn't even on the panel.
No,
So
but he was on the team.
What's he there for on the board, specialising in people and culture, if he's not even good enough to be on the panel?
Well, he was on the Teague one. Essentially, that was a failure. So
the Bolton one.
Yeah, he was on the Kane Little one. It would have been. So it would have been on all the other
Stephen
ones.
Trigg one.
Yep.
Egon Zender have been used for every appointment since Le Giudice became president in 2014.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And specifically David Campbell. And he's got that many decisions wrong that the way he paid the price for those poor decisions was to get a position on the Carlton board. That's the price he paid. He actually got a position on the board, Stephen.
Yes. And now everybody says, that's okay. We've got all these new staff members, new coach, new this, new that. You shouldn't have had to do that. You should have had it right.
Let's be honest. Luke Sayers went and headhunted Brian Cook. That wasn't done through a process. That was just a headhunting job.
Yeah, it was a checkbook. It was a checkbook job. Yeah.
The committee that was there to appoint the coach ended up appointing Michael Voss, the Stephen Bradbury of the field, because everyone else had been knocked over, right?
Or chose to pull out. Or chose to pull out.
Committee, hey?
Or chose to pull out. Alistair Clarkson, Ross Lyon,
Clarkson, Ross Lyon, etc. all gone. So what did the committee really achieve? All they were there to do in the end was to sort out whether they choose Michael Voss, who at least had some prior coaching experience,
or Kingsley.
Adam Kingsley, and I think there may have been another untried coach, a no-name guy who didn't even get a look in. And because Carlton needs a bit of a high-profile coach, they went for Voss.
Yeah.
Plus, Sayers had said already that he wanted an experienced coach. So Voss had at least some years of experience at Brisbane. Yes, Beachy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just in answer to your question of the committee. What good did it do? I went that.
Zero. What do you think, Steve?
The committee, it was a smokescreen to say, look at all the household names in football we've got that will give us credibility, and they're probably a little bit bored and haven't got much to do, so we'll just sit on a committee for a few weeks, earn a few extra dollars. Fair enough. Essentially, look, no, it was just purely a process to mask.
So really, getting back to the issue of David Campbell, what's he on the board for? He's when the board did go through a process, or allegedly go through a process, and he was part of those committees and those selection panels, they got it wrong. It ended up resulting in people being sacked after 2 or 3 years, whether it be Stephen Trigg as the CEO, or Brendan Bolton as the coach, or David Teague as the coach. So in the end,
and Vince, when you say
another committee to select another coach, and they've given us the biggest indication yet that David Campbell is useless on the board. He's dead man walking because they didn't even put him on that committee. And yet he's apparently responsible, and his specialty is people and culture and recruiting, heading up one of the biggest recruiting firms in the world, Egon Zender.
And more importantly, if you look at the Stephen Trigg appointment, when Stephen Trigg left, they said, oh, he didn't have the commercial, acumen to. He was good as an administrator, but didn't have the commercial acumen to,
He wasn't a salesman, in other words.
Yeah. So that is, if you're looking at recruiting someone through a recruitment process, if you didn't identify that off the bat straight away, that he wasn't going to be successful in that area. Oh my God. How
who's to say that a CEO is meant to be a U-Butte salesman? Because in the end, the U-Butte salesman was Kane Little, and he went around saying, well, I've got this sponsor and that sponsor, and I've come up with this U-Butte strategy to increase our membership up to 80,000. It's called giving them away on the back of a cornflakes packet. And yet, the salesman that ticked all the boxes that Legitiche wanted him to tick, the minute we crossed over from Legitiche to Sayers, see you later, mate, you're out.
But not just that. If you've got a membership manager that's a salesman or corporate salesperson, mind you, we've gone through that many back-end staff, and without going into names, there's been, it's been musical chairs in the corporate, executive level from a staffing perspective. Everybody knows that. Pay Kane Little the same money as a CEO, and if he thinks he can, get 30,000 members, we'll reward him accordingly, but don't make him the CEO.
Exactly.
Make him the head of commercials.
But they needed a CEO.
Membership.
They needed a CEO to replace Trigg because they weren't happy with Trigg as being just an administrator. All of a sudden, it seemed like the job description of being the CEO changed midstream, and I think that was a poor decision to get rid of Stephen Trigg in the end, because he was doing his job as the CEO. He was actually representing the club pretty well, I felt, and all of a sudden, no, we want a salesman to be able to sell things and to be able to increase membership more and be able to. Okay, fine, but why not get someone like Little to become your membership manager rather than your CEO? That's where they made a mistake.
Yeah, but look, I digress, mate. I didn't mean to take this session down this track, but I just used David Campbell as an example to compare.
It's another example of a board member who's technically not performing to the allocated area of responsibility that he's been given, or that he's been touted as being an expert in. The skill set, Steve. These skill sets that they.
Well, that brings us to the next point. But I will just say the board members essentially do have a portfolio, but what they do is really warm a seat, and that seat is a factional seat, which you and I both know about. But that's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why don't we talk about the next thing? Because they talk about skill sets and every board member needing to tick the boxes of skill sets. It sounds to me like these skill sets change with the wind, depending on who's coming on the board and who's not coming on the board at the current board's discretion. Because for many, many, many years, for example, we've had a lawyer on the board. We had Simon Wilson QC at one stage. Then we had Marcus Clark.
Yep.
He's another one. We've had other board members in the past that have had legal background. So it seemed to be a required skill set. Chris Townsend was the most recent one, who was more like a planning lawyer, town planning.
Yep.
Now, he resigned in August unexpectedly, and so they replaced him, but they didn't replace him with a lawyer. Now, I can tell you that at this upcoming AGM, and I can tell our viewers, that there is only one person going up for election apart from the 3 board members who are all going up for re-election. So there will be an election. There's 4 people going for 3 seats.
Yeah.
Now, originally, there was going to be another 3 people, not just another one, another 3. And one of those 3 who has since pulled out was a lawyer. And that lawyer went before the so-called Independent Nominations Committee, which is now required as per the Constitution, that you have to go up and put yourself up before them, and they'll ask you all the questions that they want to ask you, ascertain what your skill set is and see whether it's suitable and see whether it's a required skill set from this board. Well, as I said, for many, many years, decades, in fact, we've had legal representation on the board. All of a sudden, Luke Sayers doesn't replace Chris Townsend with another lawyer. So the current board doesn't have any lawyers on it. Now, this guy was a lawyer, or is a lawyer, the one that was going to go up for election.
Yep.
And he was told by the Independent Nominations Committee, because I've had this discussion with him, and they said, we don't feel like we need you on the board. We don't need any lawyers on the board. It's not a required skill set. And he said, but hang on, you've just had Chris Townsend on the board. You've had Marcus Clark before him. You've had Simon Wilson QC before him. There's been decades of lawyers representing the board. They said, no, we'll just outsource our legal work to K&L Gates, which, by the way, is the firm that one of the people on the Independent Nominations Committee actually works for them. So all of a sudden, we don't need you. So what does that tell you, Steve? You've been up before the Independent Nominations Committee before because you personally went up for election to the Carlton board on not one but two occasions. So can you relate to this sort of thing where they make you feel like you're not required?
Absolutely. I think there were some questions raised by some people over the past few weeks of why there's only one person challenging the three, especially considering the tumultuous period that we've had.
Yeah.
And a lot of angst and frustration by members. And let's be honest, we're a pretty big club. We've been a successful club. I think that there's a lot of members that could potentially offer quite a lot and bring a lot to the table at the Carlton Football Club. I think we're very fortunate in that way. From an IP perspective, I think we're blessed in having some very, very skillful people. But they're all intimidated by standing. They're only invited on. They essentially, the hypocrisy of this skill set matrix is they will reverse engineer the skill set required to the candidates they have rather than the other way around. So rather than say we need a lawyer, they will have a lawyer that they've invited on. So then they will then say, yes, the skill set is a lawyer, and we have one sitting here in the chair already, and he's been approved. He or she's been approved. If they don't have a lawyer, they will say, no, we'll outsource the legal if they don't like the lawyer that is nominating or they can't find a lawyer to apply. So really, the Independent Nominations Committee writes their own ticket after the race has been won and run, right? Essentially, or the horses have jumped, and they know they just essentially adjust their bet to betting in the run.
Let's clarify this.
It's ridiculous.
A committee of three people.
Well, one's the president.
Now, one is the current president of the Carlton Football Club.
Correct.
And he is the chairman of that committee. And yet they're calling it an independent nominations committee.
So the
and
president.
The other two people on the committee are a retired former lawyer of the club.
No, not retired. Acting.
For many, many years.
Yep.
And the other one's a retired accountant.
Yep.
Who, again, worked for a firm that does the club's audits.
Yep.
So none of the three people on this independent nominations committee are independent. None of them. They all have ties to the club and to the current board. And one of them, being the president, is the president of the board. So how can they possibly claim that these three people are independent?
So there's 2 points on that. The president stands aside if the president graciously.
Like Luke Sayers is up for election now, so he's probably not taken part in any of these meetings because it's inappropriate for him to be interviewing someone else that could potentially be challenging his position.
Yes.
But nevertheless, he's got these other two henchmen to do it for him.
But why should he be even compromised in that position, number one?
But why should he even be on this committee? This is
absolutely,
the question.
agreed.
Why should he even be on it?
Secondly, the Independent Nominations Committee isn't performance-based. They just make a decision, and it's all care, no responsibility. They don't look at the board member's performance 3 years later and people go and say back to the Independent Nominations Committee, or, you know, you approved John Smith for the board there. Yeah, he hasn't worked out too well. You said that he had all these skills, but actually he probably only got one of the 5 skill sets you said, and not performing very well. So they don't get reviewed. They're just there as a gatekeeper.
Correct.
For
so let's call a spade a spade. The Independent
Yep.
Nominations Committee is not there to assess skill set and to see whether it's suitable for the board and make a recommendation to the members based on merit. It's there as a gatekeeper to keep anyone away from the front door that is even got any ambition to be on the board. And its prime objective is to talk them out of standing.
Yeah, and they do a great job at that.
Gather from my discussions with all 3 of the people that originally put themselves up for election, of which only one of them is still putting himself up for election. The other 2 have been successfully scared off. There's no doubt in any of their minds that the main objective of that committee is to spook you, to make you feel awful for even having the gall to stand for the board. It's a little bit like saying, how dare you think that you're worthy enough to stand for a position on this board when we've got such capable people doing a fine job of it right now. And one of the questions that really makes me angry that all 3 of them were asked was, what makes you think that you can beat any of the 3 sitting members that are going up for re-election? Now,
do you know what?
Is that the reason for the Independent Nominations Committee, is it?
You know what? I don't think
like that.
I don't think the script has changed, because I've had that one a couple of times. So I think they need a refresh on that script of the questions, right?
Well,
but
Steve,
yeah.
Why do they need to refresh the script when the script has been working beautifully up till now to scare people away?
I'll jump in and say one more thing about that. So you can have the absolute Mickey Mouse CV, be born in the right cot, as they say, you know, connected to all the movers and the shakers, and, you know, have unbelievable network, be fortunate, a whole bunch of maybe, you know, successful in your own right maybe, but at the end of the day, what the INC do not do, and this is where it cons the members, and I'm happy to say this, they do not actually talk about, they don't actually assess the work that the board member will do.
No.
I mean, actually toil, getting your hands dirty, actually getting in there and doing things. They just look at the CV, the name dropping component, and it's an easy sell when you look at that. But then if you look at all of these directors that have gone through that gatekeeper and been passed and approved, they've got the best CVs. I mean, they read like they, you know, potentially could be running the country, let alone a director of a football club. Well, let's not talk about that side of it. Anyway, I shouldn't have said that. I'll get you started. And yet they use that to demean other individuals that maybe don't actually have the right the CV, but they're far better hands-on at, you know, achieving outcomes. Maybe not born in the right cot, maybe not connected as well at the top end of Collins Street as certain others would be, but they'll actually do a better job as a board member. And I think
as an independent voice, yeah.
And what Carlton needs is and I know the boards are meant to be strategic, not operational. They're not in the weeds. They're not the doers. They're the strategists, and they set the agenda of what's meant to happen.
Yeah.
But what they really don't actually, we've got a very ineffectual and non-operational board members that are just warming seats at the moment. And we've seen it through these failed portfolios. I just touched on it prior a few minutes ago. So we really need doers, not thinkers or sayers or people that are, pardon the pun, not
thinkers
I didn't
or
mean
sayers.
We actually need people that can actually get their hands.
We need people to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, right?
Absolutely. And I think the INC use the CVs of people as just an easy sell to the members, and when you put that up there, they're not really truly assessing the operational outcome, the net outcome that the club will have as a return from the board member. It is purely just who's got a good CV and how can we sell that, and that's the disappointing thing, and that'll be the trap that will keep being laid out for years to come, unfortunately. Anyway.
Yes. Well, look. I want to make one statement, if you like, or at least reveal to our viewers how I see the operation of the Carlton board. The Carlton board now, 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, has always been controlled in a very subtle, very clever, but very orchestrated way by a handful of very wealthy families. And I liken the Carlton board to a chessboard. Okay, talk about the board, it's a chessboard. And those 5 families are represented by the kings and queens and the bishops and the rooks and the knights and those big pieces on a chessboard that actually have the most value and, I guess, can do the most damage. The 8 members of the board are the pawns. And they're like soldiers, as most people would know anyone who plays chess. They're like the soldiers that go out and take the bullets on the front line. And so 8 board members go out and represent the families. Now, sometimes it'll even be a relative, a son, a nephew, someone like that, a wife of one of these people, of one of these families that make up the board, and they change them over. And so in August last year, we saw 4 people leave, largely to a lot of the pressure that we put on, but a couple of them were going to leave anyway. They'd reached their terms, I think, their 12-year maximums. But nevertheless, they didn't expect to have to replace 4 of them. Now, a lot of people said to me at the time, why don't you back off now? You've got half the board's been replaced. It's like a brand new board. You've got a new president, you've got 4 new board members. But you see, that's how clever they are at creating the perception that, oh, this is a brand new, fresh board. Remember, the pieces that matter at the back haven't changed. It's just all they've done is replaced 4 of the pawns on the chessboard with another 4 pawns. And so out goes Legitiche, out goes Townsend, out goes Judd, and in comes the others, right? The ones that came in, Lara Carey, Tim Lincoln, etc., and Greg Williams. And they represent the families. And those families are still in control of this club. And nothing's essentially changed in that sense. It looks like it's changed visually, but in reality, the same interests are still there. They're still been having their interests protected, and the protection racket continues. That's all I can say.
It's interesting you say relatives as well. A lot of them actually have and you need to do title searches and so forth via ASIC, but a lot of them have commercial directorships and other business relationships as well. So really, it is very, very convoluted and intertwined, isn't it? And I think I think then too, though, Vince, that yes, you're right with what you've said, in my opinion, but regardless if they're pawns, rooks, bishops, whatever they are, whatever piece of the chess game they are, at an AGM, I think each subcommittee needs to be represented, regardless if you're a pawn or a bishop or whatever you are. You need to be able to speak to your portfolio, to the members, and take questions. You need to be able to do that, and you need to provide a report.
I look at an AGM a little bit like one of those Senate Estimates Committee meetings.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our opportunity to ask questions that hold these people accountable. You know, like these, I don't know if you've seen them, Beachy, but, you know, these Senate Estimates Committees, I'll go and say, oh, Minister for so-and-so, you spent $20,000 on a recent trip to, you know, Hong Kong. How do you justify $20,000 on a, you know, 10-day trip? What did you do there? How did you end up accounting for $20,000? And you know, they've got to show that they've spent so-and-so on accommodation, so much on flights, so on, you know, whatever, dinners and all the rest of it. But they've got to explain how they spent the money. Now,
but
at an
they
AGM,
do say
each one of those board members should, in my view, be up for questioning, and any person that wants to ask a question of any of them based on their allocated portfolio within the board, that's what it should be there for.
But Vince, that's also an opportunity for the board to actually highlight the great work they've done. This isn't all bad. We're not saying questioning is bad.
No.
If anything, here's an opportunity to educate and engage with the members and say, actually, you know, that spend that we had, and it actually went to this, and this was the valuable final product we got from it. But we don't get that.
No, we don't. Well,
and that's
you're right. It's an opportunity even for the board to advertise its achievements, or for the board members to get up like ministers do in Parliament and actually justify themselves as to what they've been doing to represent us. But anyway, we've got someone else that's just joined us, the one and only Goran Margetta. Nice to see you, sir. I see you've got the headphones on, so you've got all of the right equipment working tonight, have you?
I do. Thank you very much for having me on, fellas.
How you going?
It's staggering. It's staggering, this conversation. It's very nerve-wracking to see where our club's at this point in time. The fact that, you know, there's been so many changes, and take into consideration, Vince, what you're saying, there's been a lot of changes, obviously, on and off the field, more off the field than anything else in recent times. But, gee, I personally, for me, I'm not getting too excited. I think Debbie Peltier said it some time ago that she's not going to get too excited until she sees the results. I'm going to back her up on that 101%. It's staggering. I mean, you look at our list and you think, oh, it's all going to go well now. There's no reason we can't make the top 4, top 8, whatever the case. And even off the field, it's a bit scary. I mean, you know, Vince, we have you on board, and you know, you and I, we have a close relationship, we have a close friendship, etc. So you've opened my eyes up to a lot of things, but at the end of the day, it's a bit scary to know what goes on behind closed doors, because I don't think that a lot of the supporters and the members and even the non-members but supporters know what goes on behind the closed doors, and I think that's where the danger lies. You know, they follow the media, they follow what's said in the media and social media, etc., and they go by that. But with the likes of yourself and Steve, looking very serious, by the way, Steve, smile a bit, mate. There we go.
Well, that's actually not a bad point. If I could just interrupt you there, Goz, if I could just interrupt you for a moment, I'll take that point up about the media with you, Steve. this what Goz was alluding to there is that I guess the average Carlton supporter relies heavily on what they read in the media or what they see on TV or listen to on radio or through any of the podcasts and social media channels. The club clearly makes a very concerted effort to manage the media perception, doesn't it? I mean, it really does.
Yes. Thank you.
Spend a lot of energy and a lot of time on managing perception, as I put it. What are your views on that, Steve? What's been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think that so we talk about this election as an example, just to start with. They want you talk about participation in votership. They want the
less is best.
Less is more. Right? So they want the least amount of people to vote as possible. And
that nobody knows about the election.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's in February. That's why the letter that goes out about it's in January while we're still all on school holidays and what have you. And that's why to find the CV of the one and only candidate that's putting up his hand to join the board outside of the board. So Bedri Sejnovski's his name. So if you want to try and find out anything about him or his CV or whatever, you've got to go through like a rabbit warren of things on the Carlton website just to find his CV, don't you?
You do. And essentially they don't want to publicise him at all, because any publicity they do is they might plant the seed of him being a potential, option for people to vote for, right? So that's one thing.
I know how that feels. When we took up our action last year, we were never spoken to or referred to in the media.
Yeah. Also, they will have their set amount of people that they will just tell them how to vote, and they'll follow suit, and they'll get through, right? That's how it pretty much works. Yeah. Regarding media perception, of course, a business has to try and put the best image on. Of course, a business or an organisation doesn't want to air all their dirty laundry, right? Of course they don't. They want to manage the message, and it's called public relations 101, essentially, right? It's image and perception is everything. But at the same time, I think that Carlton probably, if you had a ladder for, PR or PR or making something look better than what it is, I think Carlton would be, undefeated with a percentage of like 200 on that ladder, and that's because essentially any coterie group, any public forum, they'll get to the owner of that or the person that runs that administrator with that, and they will coerce them. I'm not saying bribe it, not necessarily bribe, but just coerce them or cuddle up to them, encourage them to see things their way and present things their way. And fair enough, that's what they do. The problem is the average member, because now the football club is a website. You don't. It's not like the old days where you'd go to training and you'd speak to people and you'd even see, heaven forbid, bump into staff, and you actually had a social club. Remember those days? Long time ago, right?
Long time ago.
Okay.
Many moons ago.
You'd see what it is, and you'd actually you could gauge staff sentiment. The accountant, it's 5:30, you're watching training, the accountant walks down, have a chat, how's things, blah, blah, blah. They might leak that, the culture's awful, or they might say things are going great and they seem really happy. You might even speak to players as they go to their car, and you might get more information out of them, right? I'm just generally, you might speak to other supporters who know other things. Yeah, sure, there's hearsay and gossip and whatnot, but you actually have a club that's communicating. This is now a website, and shows like, mediums such as this are where people digest their information from. So the club are very smart from a strategy. And by the way, I'm no Bruin transfer person or anything like that, right? But the club are really smart from a strategy point of view to control all the digital platforms they possibly can, the most influential ones, and ensure that messaging aligns with theirs. The problem is, though, supporters don't then get always the right picture. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying the club shouldn't be doing what they're doing. I'm just more saying to the supporters, be aware what you're consuming and digesting is coming through a filter.
Can I just jump in right there?
Yeah.
My apologies for jumping in, Steve.
No, you're
I'm going to throw all my support behind what you just said. It is about the club controlling a lot what goes on behind the digital platforms, etc. 100%, no question, etc. My question to you, though, and I'm probably answering a question with an answer, really, is with for the average Joe that opens up the newspaper tomorrow morning, for example, and reads that Carlton have sacked their AFLW women's coach, and they're embarking on a new coaching strategy, blah, blah, blah. They're going down this direction for the club in general, etc. How much do you think that the club in all controls of that? Because for me, personally, I think that it's very, it's all on the one page. And I might, hopefully you understand what I'm saying here.
So guys, the way it works is there's publicity firms, PR firms. So Carlton have 3. So pretty heavily invested in that area, right? Don't worry about the football department. No, only joking. But they have a very, if they were paying the tax on PR firms, Carlton would be paying the highest tax
on that comment.
Right?
Do you notice how Vince smiled on that comment too when you made that comment? Vince was smiling. But anyway, please, Steve.
So the articles written, the PR firms are attached to journos. Journos now are time poor. There are less journos than ever. The story's written almost for the journo. It's a press release that the journo, and I'm not Media Watch or anything like that, but I'm just saying that the journos picked it, cut and pasted and put it all together, and here we go. Now, by the way, Harold Sun, we're giving you access to Patrick Cripps for a 2-page spread interview. Now, we want a quid pro quo. We want a few good news stories about we just sacked the coach. Just go easy on us. You know, you want Patrick Cripps for this thing, don't you? Yeah, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll look after you. Don't go too hard. We've sacked the coach, but actually, this is the messaging. This is the crisis management comms piece that we're going to put behind it. Essentially, guys, that's what it is. Now, the journalism is dead now. Finished. It's all junk. It's all junk because they're all writing through their wallets.
Spot on.
Right?
Spot on.
And I'm not just talking football, but I'm talking everything like that. So, as a supporter, I think I don't. By the way, some of the messages the club might provide are fairly legitimate and pretty much see it as it is. But many of them may not be. And I just would think that supporters would just need to think a bit deeper than that. Also, the homework that journalists would do is pretty limited. And presenting a piece of writing with opposing points of view opposed to just one point of view is almost rare. So they're not going to potentially say, well, actually, Harford was sacked, but was it a cultural problem? Was it a football program problem, or was it just him? They'll just probably go with the narrative. Few journalists that are on big enough coin can probably afford to take that risk and be very independent. You know, that's my take on that answer, guys. But Vince, you may have another point of view.
No, I go along with everything you just said there. I think that's pretty spot on.
He's too scared to go against you anyway.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, feel free, mate. Yeah.
No. In fact, I highlighted 6 months ago when the club first sent out an email about this new constitution that it now wants us to vote on. When it originally wanted us to vote on it back in July and August last year, when they sent the email, they also had an article in The Age that was authored by a guy called Michael Gleeson, and there was absolutely no doubt, not a skerrick of doubt in my mind, that entire article was provided by the club, and that Michael Gleeson, being the lazy journalist that he obviously was or is,
he was writing that from
any
overseas.
Background checks, didn't do any checks on anything, because if he had it, he would have found the same power grab clauses that I identified and I brought to light through the media, and yet he didn't.
He was at the Olympics, Vince. At that very time, he was actually at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Is that
But
right,
isn't it amazing
Steve?
how
I
all of a
thought
sudden
so.
he had time
I
to
thought
write an
so.
article about Carlton's new constitution and put in a photo of Mark Lejudice with Sid Jackson and holding a didgeridoo or whatever he was doing. So, it's, that's a blatant example of backing you up, Steve, on the point that you made about journalism is dead.
Journalism died a long time ago, and unfortunately, in my point of view anyway, unfortunately, it's seeped through many, many years of absolute garbage right now. That's why I don't hold much credit to anything I read online or in the newspaper or anything else. And Vince, you and I, we've had meetings, we've had conversations, etc. You know where I'm coming from.
Yep.
I have to say though, I'm more concerned in general for this club from the media / social media side of things. What's happening at the club at the moment inside behind closed doors compared to what's being transpired to the members and to the public. For me, there is a massive, massive gap, and that's my greatest concern. Okay, from reality to non-reality.
So guys, I question. So every member wants a different thing, right? Like some members may want to read what the player had for breakfast, what their favorite cooking recipe is, things like that, bits and pieces.
Favorite drink, favorite food, favorite music.
Where would you like to go on a holiday? All that sort of stuff, right?
All that stuff that used to be in the
people want to read all that.
30 years.
Exactly.
All that stuff that used to be in the football record 30 years ago, Steve.
I actually didn't. You'd be surprised about some people, things you didn't know about players. Anyway, that was good. And as soon as you mention balance sheets or issues, if you speak against, they turn off. Other people, if you speak against Carlton at all, even though if you challenge Carlton, I'm not saying speak against them, but challenge them.
Challenge its board.
Yeah, or decisions the club has made. Yeah. People would think, oh no, you're not a good supporter. When actually, challenge is good, because if the people at the top are doing such a great job, they can justify it and iterate it in another way so that more people understand it. It's an opportunity to communicate what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Some people would see that you're committing treason or espionage or something, right? That if you dare challenge the club. Okay.
I know the feeling, Steve.
Yeah.
Sure. Both of you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that, Beachy?
I think both of you know the feeling.
Well, the thing is this, as Steve said, sometimes you need to speak up, have a spine, and challenge the people that are meant to be looking after our collective interests as members. Unfortunately, there are some people out there that see that as being a treacherous or treasonous act because you dare challenge the club's board or you dare challenge the club's administration.
So we should we want more ideas. We actually want, and this comes back to what I said earlier. We have so many fabulous members out there beyond the 5 families and their mates and their circles and their rooks and queens and pawns and whatever chess pieces you want to call them, right? We have so many fabulous members out there, highly intelligent, highly skilled people.
Amazing, some of them.
Could offer so much to the football club. We should have a list as long as your arm of candidates for the board for the next election. Yes. We should have a wealth of riches. You should have a problem in working out who you're going to vote for. A great problem to have. And the
when
board
you're
for them,
spoiled by choice,
absolutely.
It's a nice problem.
It's pretty shallow draft at the moment, isn't it? That's all I'll say. And that's the way they want it.
Steve, you have brought up you made an absolute epic point. As long as your arm, etc., perfect, spot on. I've got to say, with the likes of people out there that have been so impassioned with the club and where we've been for the last 25, 30 years, it's hurt a lot of us. It's hurt, no question, it's hurt a lot of us, okay? Unfortunately, there's been, the political side of things that have hampered the efforts. You know what I mean? I feel personally, and this may have been addressed earlier on, but hats off. I know, Vince, you don't like reaping any sort of recognition, but I'm going to say yourself and Carlton now have absolutely reaped and spoken on behalf of many people that were too scared to open their mouths and to say what's on their minds. And the moment yourself and anybody affiliated with Carlton now opened their mouths and said what was supposed to be said, they got scared. I mean, for God's sakes, I'm not going to name names, Vince, and I'm not going to name and shame, but people on Twitter and on other social avenues took part to degrade Carlton.
So guys, I'm going to interrupt you for a sec. Okay, I'll apologise for interrupting. Absolutely.
Jeez.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I do.
Go ahead.
Because that comes back to the media and comms strategy. So what you need to do in comms is not just control your media strategy, but your brand strategy. So what you need to do is get to the influencers. So you've got people that are influencers, e.g., they may have a network they may be successful media personalities, or they may be social influencers. And I don't mean Nadia Bartel or anything like that. I actually mean influencers from the point of view of influencers, not Instagram or any of that business, right? Or TikTok or whatever they do, right? I more mean influencers like someone who's popular, knows 200, 300, 400 people, has a network, and you cuddle up to them, and you take them out for a coffee, or you speak to them, and you tell them your strategy as you want it to be, communicated to those 500 flock of people that they would are potentially influencing as an influencer, and you get them that way as well. So it's a multi-pronged strategy when you talk about your media strategy, because it's not just let's put an article out. It's covering all bases on how people consume information. Okay, back to your point. Sorry, I just wanted to add to that.
No. You bring up a good point. I actually lost my point after that comment. But no. Look, in closing, I just want to say that with good intentions comes criticism and which I'm sure, Vince, you've come across with the whole campaign.
It's all right, guys. I'm a big boy. I can cop it. Don't worry. I know that there's more than enough people out there that understand the real reasons why I've done what I've done, and that they understand that I'm out there representing the best interests of the Carlton member.
And that's never Dwayne from the people that matter, because that's true to form. I'm not going to sing your praise. I know you don't like taking centre stage, so I'm going to leave it at that.
I don't want you to do it. You've done more than enough of that. And we are at about an hour and a half into the show, and we need to start talking about other sports. So, mate, if there's nothing else you want to bring up other than to praise me, as you usually do, thanks so much for coming on and giving us your views. And
absolutely.
Thanks, gents. Thanks, gents.
All the very best. Have a good week.
Have a great week, and let's hope blue skies ahead.
Yeah, let's hope the AFLW can rebound.
Yes.
That's the one.
All right. Thanks, guys. And by the way, just before we close on the whole subject of the board and everything else, I did say last week on the show that we would have the one and only last remaining candidate on the show this week, Bedri Sanovsky. Unfortunately, I did speak with him during the week. He's had a change of heart. He was quite happy for me to say this because he wants to be honest about it. He just doesn't particularly want to promote himself on social media. I thought it'd be an opportunity for him to come on and tell us a little bit about himself and maybe give us his thoughts on where Carlton's at and how he can make a difference on the board, and maybe even tell us about his experience with the Independent Nominations Committee, Steve. But Unfortunately, Bedry's changed his mind about all that. So we still wish him all the best. And look, I'll put my Carlton Now hat on, okay? I've got to say what Carlton Now in general encourages. So without necessarily sort of, how can I put this? Without what's the right word? When you're condoning a candidate.
Endorsing.
Yeah.
Endorsing. That's the word I was thinking. Sorry about that. Yeah, that's the word I was searching for. Without endorsing any particular individual candidate, including Bedry, in general, what we want to see more of is independent representation on the board. And that's just a very general thing that we would encourage to see more people who are not aligned with the families representing the club and its members. Because if there's one thing that this board has shown itself to be lacking in when it really matters, is its preparedness to put the interests of the member first rather than itself first. And that's one of the main reasons why I want to see change at board level. I'm sure Bedry, if he did get the opportunity to get enough votes to get on the board, he would make some difference. I know he's only going to be one of 8, but you've got to start somewhere. And hopefully he would be able to get on there and be a vocal representative of the Carlton members.
And Vince, I'll put my Steve hat on now, which I haven't taken off. And I will say that what I want to see is I want to see as many people vote as possible. I want to see as many people read the constitutional amendment as possible. I want to see as many people participate in the political process as possible. Not as few, as many. I would love to. Now, we'll never know that because the club don't release the numbers of votes that are taken, unfortunately. They like to keep those cards close to their chest.
Well, that's another thing I've got to say, Steve. If I could just take up 1 minute on that. For the Carlton board, when did they stop announcing how many votes were received and how many votes went to this candidate versus that candidate and the other? I mean, can you imagine running a state or federal election like that where you're not telling the public how many votes were actually received?
Anthony Green
providing the percentages.
Anthony Green had a heart attack, wouldn't he, on the ABC when he's got his pressing him and Casey Briggs are pressing the board, right? And flipping through all the seats, and you don't actually know the numbers.
I mean, seriously, Alan Joyce, the CEO of Qantas during the week, came out and suggested that Western Australia, under the premiership of Mark McGowan, was starting to resemble North Korea. Well, clearly, Alan Joyce hasn't gone anywhere near the Carlton Football Club because if anything represents North Korea more, it's us. I mean, fancy not disclosing how many votes were received at the election. Since when did that come in? And who took it upon themselves to make that decision? Because I dare say, the Constitution doesn't say that we have to disclose it. So guess what? We're not going to.
Margins.
Even though we've done it for the last 150 years.
So percentages are used, not numbers. So just to the view.
It's wrong to only use percentages.
So just explain to everyone what we're talking about. Essentially, Vince, I could be going up for election against you, and rather than say 600 people voted for Steve and 800 people voted for Vince, and the percentage where I went to school, Vince won by 25% of the vote. They won't say there's 600 or 800. They'll just say 25%.
They won't give you hope that, hey, you've only got to get another couple of hundred people to vote for you and you've caught up to me. They'd rather make you think, as an independent candidate, you didn't get anywhere near the votes in percentage terms, so that'll kill you off.
And that comes back to...
If the numbers were disclosed, you might actually be heartened by the fact that you've only got to get another couple of hundred people to vote for you.
And that comes back to the point I was trying to make, where we want people engaged. We want people reading the biographies of these people, clicking through all the gates, all the pages and tabs, and reading these biographies. And then we want people to make an informed decision as best as they possibly can, right? So whether that be they vote for 1, 2, or 3 candidates, it's their choice. that would be
Yeah.
what I'd like.
Yeah.
And I'd also love to see in the future more candidates. But nonetheless, let's hope. I encourage everyone to vote. I encourage everyone to vote for one or as many people as they possibly can. I encourage every people not just to vote for someone because their mate told them. Actually read and have a good think about what portfolio does that board member represent and how do you think that has gone, or new candidate, what experience do they have? I don't mean CEO or captain of industry necessarily, although it might be good, it might not be, depending. And can they make a hands-on difference to the club? That's my wish.
Yeah. Well, I think we've talked enough about Carlton. It's women's team, it's women's program, the board members, the forthcoming AGM, the forthcoming election, and our views on what really goes on behind the scenes. I think we've exposed enough smoke and mirrors for 1 week. Unless there's anything else either of you two want to say.
I'll just say, Vince, I think we've got some more in another particular summer code to talk about in a moment, but I won't steal your thunder there.
Yes, well, let's go to that right now. By the way, everyone that's out there watching, if you want to pass a comment or ask a question, I should have said this at the outset. Don't hesitate to join in the conversation. Post your comment or ask your question on our YouTube page in the blue corner. Or what's that? There's a comment from Tony Amadeo. I am on the same page as you, Vince, I think is what he's trying to say. I'm glad you're on the same page, Tony. Yes, the YouTube channel in the blue corner, or you can find us on Facebook as well in the blue corner. And of course, if you like and share and subscribe everything, as per what every other channel asks you to do, that's what we're asking you to do as well. And make sure you get the notifications every week.
Just
8 o'clock every Sunday night.
Just a couple more comments. Peter Vlahos says,
hi, Peter. AFLW team is a crock. Is it really?
He's not happy with
Maybe
it.
we should be sponsored by
the
sandals. Isn't that the one with the crocodile?
or the croc sandal. Yeah. The croc sandals.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. There's another one here from Rob Galicchio. Hey, Rob. Good evening to Pom.
Good evening to Pom. Not sure.
I think I know.
Good evening to you, Rob.
G'day, Rob. How you going?
I think he meant PM.
Yep. And Sandra McDonald, we need to be in front of this to go forward and build. So essentially what Sandra's referring to is we need an academy type feeder football factory, if you like, for the women as program. Obviously, I couldn't agree more with that. I think the talent pathways is a problem. And, even if someone plays for our VFLW team, Beachy, I'm going to ask you a question without notice here. What rights does Carlton have to recruit them the following year in the draft? I know it's been a problem with the VFL if you've got a top up or a sup list or a non-listed player and recruiting that player into the men's program. But how does that work for the VFLW draft?
Okay, so hang on, let me just clarify the question here. You're asking how does it work in terms of a VFLW player nominated in the AFL draft? Is that correct?
Yeah, did Carlton get preference on them the following year? Is it in Carlton's interest to develop them?
Okay, I believe it should be in Carlton's interest to develop them if they are looking at them for a pick in the draft of that year. The thing that sort of annoys me at this current time is that the draft is separated into state pools. Now, bear with me because it might be a bit of a complicated process for some, the person that is nominated for the draft has a choice to nominate for that state pool. Example, Victoria, SA, WA, Queensland, New South Wales. If they choose to nominate Victoria, for example, then Carlton has a chance to get them. However, if they nominate for somewhere like Queensland, then it's a chance for Brisbane and Gold Coast, and so on if they nominate for SA, and so on for WA.
So Beachy, if a Carlton player in the VFLW program wants to play at Carlton put all this work into developing, mentoring them, and so forth. They could have five players, and they nominate. Carlton don't have any priority other than the fact that they're in their state pool, but that's about it. Really, they have no preference to get them. So hence, I think. So essentially, get back to Sandra's point. Sandra, we do have to develop, but let's be honest. Why would you? Why would you develop a player, spend all that time and money? Yes, they're going to obviously benefit you in your VFLW program, no doubt, but you're actually not going to see the fruits of that labour in the AFLW program, not necessarily because you might not get them in the draft. They may be picked up earlier by another club.
Exactly. They might end up at Richmond. They might end up at St Kilda. They might end up at Collingwood, God forbid. Hell, they might even end up at the Western Bulldogs, for all we know. But that's the thing. It's sort of taken to chance by that point.
So really, development is up to the AFL, not the clubs. I hate to say that.
In other words, you couldn't expect the clubs, without any guarantee of being able to pick them up in the draft, you couldn't realistically expect the clubs to actually put in the time and the money and the energy to develop these girls.
Absolutely. That's what I'm trying to say. So to answering Sandra's point, I don't want to be negative, Sandra, and I completely get what you're saying, but why would you develop a player in the VFLW, put all this work, or several players, and have a strong program when there's a risk you won't get them? And of course the scouts, all the recruiters are watching all the VFL games, so they're going to know your play's pretty good, unless you can hide them somehow. That used to be what Kevin Sheedy used to do back in the old days, but that's another story. But but look, just answering Sandra's point anyway. It's a bit deeper than that. Yeah.
Okay, let's have a change of code and sport.
Yes.
Let's get off football now and talk a little bit about cricket. Now, we saw during the week that the ongoing saga with Justin Langer came to a head. What has since been divulged, as far as I can see, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Beachy, is that the directors, or if you like, the board of Cricket Australia, offered Justin Langer a mere 6-month extension of his contract. That's all they were prepared to offer him, despite the fact that he presided over this team that just recently, in the last 6 months, won a T20 World Cup in the United Arab Emirates and won a 4-0 whitewash. Actually, a 4-0 series victory over England in the Ashes, which could easily have been a 5-0 whitewash if our captain had declared a little bit earlier in that last innings in the Sydney Test. But anyway, we were 1 wicket short of having a 5-0 whitewash of England. And despite being the coach of this team and presiding over all of that success, the most that they were prepared to offer him was a 6-month extension. I think Justin Langer's probably been offended by that and decided, I'm going to get in first here. They clearly don't want me, so I'm going to resign. That's how I see it. How do you see it, Steve?
Absolutely, that's an insult. He spent all his time in Melbourne going through this, this whole process. He essentially had to answer questions about his performance. Yet, I mean, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? When you look at what he did, not just what he did, but the trying circumstances that he had with all of the the controversies, all of the players that were not available after, obviously, the Tim Payne scandal and all of those other elements. He did a great job unifying and essentially getting outcomes for the team, a number one Test nation now.
Well, again, doesn't this come down to accountability? I mean, if you go to value outcomes, which is what accountability is all about, well, how can you possibly only offer him a 6-month extension of his contract?
Well, it's not just an extension. That would have been it after the 6 months. So that was basically you stay as a caretaker coach for 6 months. Like absolute insult to one of our best openers that we've had, in history, for Australia.
A favourite son.
Absolutely spot on. And you treat him like that 6 months, and then it was we're going in another direction. All the corporate buzzwords and spin that the HR people like to, people and culture people love to refer to that mean nothing, just to, essentially put you off the scent. And then
we're going in a different direction as code language for we don't want you anymore. You're being effectively given the boot.
So Vince, I'm sacking you, but I'm giving you 6 months' notice. Stay and be happy and smile. So Australia could win every game. If he chose to stay for 6 months, Australia could win every game by an innings.
No guarantee of anything. Yeah.
Right? And he would still be gone in 6 months' time because of that different direction based on the corporate buzzwords that were used.
But it beggars well, I don't know if you've got anything more to add to that, Beachy, but doesn't it bring to your mind the whole question of what's the guy done wrong? I mean, we've heard, one thing I did read is that apparently he has a micromanagement style, and that didn't go down well with a few of the players, and so now we've got the tail wagging the dog, where the players are dictating who they want as their coach.
But Vince, you had in AFL circles, I'll just use your analogy. Sorry, Beach, I'll let you answer the question. But you had Damien Hardwick and Bomber Thompson for Geelong. Yeah. Damien Hardwick for Richmond. That were both performance reviewed, and it were determined that they were excellent coaches, but they were just a bit too much in the detail, and they didn't delegate. Mm-hmm. So you could say to Langer still, if that's the case, Justin, not everybody's not perfect, but could you just work on delegating a little bit more and not get too into the micro with the players? Just some feedback, please take it on board. But you're doing a great job, and the team's winning and everything's going great. Yeah. Yeah. Instead, they thought that was a major failing, or that was an excuse that they used to get rid of him. I'll let you answer, Beachy.
Thanks, Steve. As you can probably tell, boys, there has been a fair bit of biting the tongue here, because my reaction to the whole Justin Langer saga has nothing been short of anger. It is a disgrace that our fucking national board that base themselves in Melbourne, right, just in Melbourne, have treated him as a scapegoat. And I'm sorry, I'm going to try not to swear too much.
But hang on, a scapegoat for what? There hasn't been any failure to be a scapegoat for. We've won everything. No. We're back on top of the Test rankings. We've won the T20 World Cup. We've just won the Ashes 4-0.
Should have been 5.
What more are you expecting your coach to achieve?
Yeah, let me finish this.
Yeah.
He's been treated as a scapegoat, despite the success that he has achieved.
Yeah.
Right? Winning the T20 World Cup in the UAE, which, by the way, is probably one of the hardest places to play, by the way. All right, let's not ignore that fact, because it is hot there 24/7. All right, it doesn't matter what season it is. He's then gone to the UK, won an Ashes there. He's done it again here, and you've got fucking idiots that are saying, "Oh, he's too aggressive." Where? Mate, if he's aggressive to you, then what the fuck are you doing playing for Australia? Let's be honest with that right now, because it is a disgrace that this country's board has decided to mistreat him, even though he's made all the success. And it pisses me off. I've never been as angry about this since the board's handling of the sandpaper scandal in South Africa. So much so that I was calling for all of the board to be sacked, all the players to be sacked as well for their contracts, and almost even shut the doors, because I was very, very angry with this, and I'm still angry about this now.
So Beachy,
Wow.
so Beachy, what you're saying
I've never
is
seen Beachy more fired up about anything, even to do with Carlton.
he's come off a
I
longer
love
run.
it. I love it, Beachy.
He's come off a longer run than Joel Garner, hasn't he? But anyway,
Yes.
sorry, probably not a good analogy.
Michael Holding, actually.
Oh yeah. Sorry, sorry, showing our age with the people we're mentioning here. But Beachy, surely, like if you look at the people making these decisions, Cricket Australia's board, they have they don't actually have a clean copybook, do they? Let's be honest. You've got the Tim Payne, the Sandpaper Gate. You've got numerous. Just to name a few. Where do you start? Where do you want to start and stop? There's so many incidents that they've got where they've really publicly made major blues, and to think that they've now gone and broken something that tried to fix something that wasn't broken is just beyond me. And I just can't believe it.
Well, none of us can, Steve. That's the short point. None of us can.
The irony is, sorry, Beachy, I'll let you continue. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right, Vince. Thank you. That's the short point, Vince. You've got a coach who's no longer there. Probably one of our best batters in the modern era that used to open for Australia from WA. Right, we'll leave the state out of it for a bit because I'll probably hang on about that for another.
You'll set Vince off too. You'll set, yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, he's
Korea.
Given us success. He's given us success, and they've now said to him, "We're going to give you a 6-month extension because we believe that you are going in the right direction, but the players don't like you." Now, boys, let me ask you a question. Did you guys see a documentary that may or may not have been on Amazon called The Test?
No, I didn't.
No, I heard about it though.
Okay. So it practically followed the Cricket Australia, it followed the Australian cricket team in the lead up to the World Cup in 2019. It also covered the UAE Test matches against Pakistan. Now, for example, and I'm going to just use this example, Usman Khawaja, he's decided to try and arc up about it because Australia kept having collapses. Long story short, Lena has bitten back and said, well, when you stop having fucking collapses of 20 wickets, then we can start worrying about batting. Until then, you need to protect your fucking wicket. And I don't give a fuck what you think. You need to actually listen to what I'm being told. Now, it wasn't in those words, but you get the gist. Because he wanted to see us stop having these collapses, and these collapses kept on happening while Lena was coach, and he was trying desperately hard to fix that, despite the fact that he might have come across as aggressive. But you see, that's the thing. You need coaches to tell them how it is. You need to see them say, this is a spade. This is what you've got to do. Don't muck around with it. You've actually got to use it for its purpose. And as far as I'm concerned, the way that the Cricket Australia board have handled this situation, I'm sorry, but I'm calling for Nick Hockley and for everyone else on that Cricket Australia board to step down immediately. This is a disgrace that this country has had to go through something like this again since the sandpaper scandal in South Africa.
Well, that's what I was going to say before, was that the irony of all of this is that Langer was brought in at a time of crisis after that sandpaper scandal, wasn't it? Because Darren Lehman was the manager of the team back then, or the coach of the team back then. And he was one that was quite popular because he probably was just one of the boys. But all of that happened under his nose. Now, whether he was aware of the sandpaper thing or not, I don't know. But in the end, he resigned.
So
in came Justin Langer and cleaned it all up. And he had to oversee a real awkward period where you had two of your senior players in Steve Smith and David Warner, effectively suspended or disqualified from playing for the team for what, 12 months?
Yeah.
6 to 12 months.
Right. So, that wouldn't have been easy. And yet it was very well managed. Tim Payne, I thought, did an excellent job as the new standing captain. And he actually achieved a lot of success as captain of the Australian cricket team. And it's interesting that the minute he had a bit of an issue, what was it? Not even, 4 months ago? Not even 3 months ago? They threw him under the bus as well. See you later, Tim, you're gone.
But Vince, it's interesting that...
I wasn't very impressed with how they handled Tim Payne either. Tim Payne deserved better than that. And I think Ricky Ponting in the last 24 hours has come out and effectively criticised Cricket Australia. There's been scathing, actually, of Cricket Australia for how they've handled both Tim Payne and now Justin Langer.
So during the World Cup, during the period where Australia was successful under Lehman, right? If you want to talk HR speak, people and culture stuff, right? You've got Lehman let the players play. They almost coached themselves, and he took a back seat and directed traffic, but wasn't a micromanager. He was a macro manager. Okay. Yeah. Then it got a little bit too that the players probably got a bit too much rope and essentially started doing things, took too much on it themselves and needed more direction, and the sandpaper issue happened. Then they bring Langer in, who's more of a in the detail a lot more. It starts working, and now they criticise him for being in the detail. Where's the logic? Because the players didn't like it? Come on.
Well, the thing is this. The minute you take away someone who's across the detail and who tries to hold players accountable and to try and make them responsible, unfortunately, a lot of young people today, they're not used to having someone on their backside holding them accountable for what they're meant to be doing. They just want someone who's going to be easy on them because they don't handle criticism well, or they don't handle advice. They don't handle suggestions. They're beyond all of that. They just want someone there to make them feel good.
Hey,
well,
Vince, what about being told that
being a coach is more than just making a player feel good about himself? Sorry?
I was going to say, what about being told? Forget suggestions. Being told that they have to improve something.
Or
it's a non-negotiable.
A coach can suggest to you what you need to do, or he can tell you need to do this. But it all comes down to style, and obviously Justin Langer must have had in the eyes of the players, or some players, a bit of an abrasive style about him. So a lot of them rejected that. But
but if it worked,
I don't know. The tail seems to be wagging the dog at the Australian cricket team.
But Vince, if it worked, with his style must have worked because they were winning matches and performing, right? So as annoying as much as they wouldn't have liked that style, it might have been the best thing for them.
Let me bring you back to an example with the Carlton Football Club. I've spoken to many a player. I've spoken to many a Carlton player back in the 80s, in the late 80s, about Robert Walls' coaching style. And he was very hard on the players. He came back from Fitzroy, as you know, at the end of 85, and they did a swap with David Parkin.
Yep.
Parkin went and coached Fitzroy, and Walls came to Carlton. Now, the reason, in a lot of players' opinion now, not then, but now, as to why they succeeded under Walls for those 3 years is because he was hard on them, because he did challenge them, because he didn't make training easy, because he push them harder than what Parkin was pushing them towards the end of his tenure. And there would be training sessions in the middle of winter with a cold, wet ball, and he'd ask them to punch the ball, and you'd almost have a broken hand as a result of it because it was only 7 degrees outside. And they hated it, but it toughened them up. And, you know, whether you talk to Craig Bradley or David Glascott or Stephen Kernahan or any of the players that played in that 1987 team, they will tell you that it was that side of Robert Walls that made them really hard as nails. And even though they had that disappointment of 86 where they were probably not quite ready, 87, nothing was going to beat them. They just knew it. And, you know, then again, a year and a half after they won the flag, Walls was sacked. Why? Because he got on the nerves of all the Carlton players that much that they stopped playing for him. So in the end,
there's a fine line. Yeah,
there's maybe only a certain time limit to all of that.
And I think another analogy
it'll be
would
interesting now to see who Cricket Australia appoints as the next coach and what sort of style that person has in comparison to Justin Lang.
Another analogy would be, Vince, I think people have all had bosses or managers or so forth that maybe annoyed them and did ask a lot of them, but at the end of the day, they made them better employees or better workers for them, right, as a result. I think that's the case. And as you said,
again, if I can bring up one other thing again on this issue with Carlton now, pardon the pun about Carlton now, but the Carlton team now has just seen their previous coach, David Teague, get sacked. And he was largely renowned for being quite soft on them, more of a mate rather than a coach. You know, probably didn't hold them accountable enough, made excuses for them, whether it be in press conferences or even at the club, took it too easy on his better players. Now, it'll be interesting now to see with Voss coming into the job, if he's tough on them, like Lee Matthews would have been tough on the Brisbane players when he came in, like Voss himself would have been tough on the Brisbane players when he got the gig as a coach after Matthews left. If Voss adopts that sort of tough attitude on the players now, it'll be interesting to see how the Carlton players respond. Are they going to, you know, do the hard yards, accept the discipline, accept the hard-nosed coaching, or are they going to go to water and sook and go and cry in the corner and not want a coach that's got that sort of style? Because I dare say that's probably the main point of difference between your David Teagues and your Michael Vosses. He's going to be harder on the players in order to bring about a better performance.
Yeah, and I think, Vince, good leadership and coaching, though, he needs to be hard on the players, but he also has got to be hard on himself. And he also needs to admit if he's made a mistake as well. And if you can do that, I think you get respect. It's not just the player's fault. It could be the coach's fault, but the coach at least calls out an area and then says he'll do better and works on it. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what Simon Goodwin did with Melbourne in the last couple of years, but whatever he did, you know, is just worked magically, really, to bring about a team that finished second last in 2019, that then rises 8 rungs up the ladder to 9th, from 17th to 9th the following year, just missing out on the finals in 2020, I should say. And then rises another 8 rungs up the ladder to first. So from 17th to first in 2 years. Amazing. Yeah. Now, that's got to be up here stuff. It's nothing to do with physical. It's nothing to do with fitness. It's to do with how you're mentally preparing your players and whether you've got this all-in buy-in. That's what I think Carlton needs. It needs a buy-in by everybody to a philosophy and to a not only a game plan, but a whole of club approach to achieving success.
Absolutely.
I don't know what that plan is because I'm not privy to it, but that's what it needs. everyone's got to be going in the same direction at the same time, at the same pace.
And Cricket Australia doesn't seem to be doing that, and that's that is the problem.
And that's what
it'll be interesting to see whether this has any detrimental effect or whether it has the other effect on the playing group in the next few months. It'll be very interesting to watch. All right, just on the cricket, Beachy, we've obviously seen the end of the BBL. We talked about that last week, I think, where the Scorchers beat the Sydney Sixers. So another premiership to the Scorchers. They're such a good team in the BBL. It's unbelievable how they've done it, being away from Perth all that time. It's even a more remarkable success that they achieved because of that very fact that they were away from Perth for pretty much the entire tournament. And also, we should briefly touch on the women's Ashes. What a fantastic... Did you see that Ashes test between Australia and England and the girls? That was a fantastic match. And apparently it achieved a record viewership on KO and Foxtel, whoever was covering it. And I'll tell you right now, I was one of them because it was just an intriguing last day's play. And I think England needed to make 257 for victory, I think it was. Ended up getting 9 out. So they were one wicket away from losing the test match. 9 out for 245. And they successfully defended in the last couple of overs. And it ended up being a drawn match. But it could have gone... You had all 4 results possible with 1 over to go, Steve. You could have had an England victory.
Yeah,
you could have had an Australian victory. You could have had a tie where the scores are level at 256 and then go out. So then you have a tie, or you have a draw, because neither England made the runs or Australia didn't get the wickets. So all four results were possible, and with an over or 2 to go.
Exactly.
Just incredible.
It was just enthralling. Now, I was actually at my local cricket club, and we had it on the TV, so I was definitely keeping an eye on it when it was on. I'll just quickly touch on the Women's Ashes again, because there was actually a game today out at the...
they've had a couple of one-day internationals since then. This Ashes, by the way, Steve, I don't know if you're onto it, but it's like a fruit salad, really. They've had a couple of T20 matches. They've had a test, and now they're having, I think, 3 one-day internationals. And so it's a whole combination of results and points and what have you. It looks like Australia's won the Ashes because England needed to beat them in the test match to have any chance. But, I look, just from a women's cricket point of view, I'll be honest. I'll make this statement. Women's cricket is far more digestible and at a far greater standard in comparison to men's cricket than what women's football is, as in AFL football, compared to men's AFL football. Now, I know that there's still a way to go with the girls in the AFL football. There's obviously work to do there, but it's I guess in some cases, how can I put it? I find some matches in AFLW unwatchable, whereas women's cricket, I could easily sit there and watch a whole day of it. It's a far better standard of cricket. You being a cricket buff, Beachy, what are your views on that?
I'll just touch on that for a minute.
Sorry, mate, you're breaking up just a little bit there. I'm not sure what's happened to you.
Today.
Is your internet not working properly? Just start again, Beachy. That's better.
So, I'm going to touch on the game today, but I'm just going to quickly touch on your point as well. Now, as far as I'm concerned, we need to give the AFLW a chance because the standard will improve. It's just going to take some time to get it to grow a little bit. Now, I will take it in a staggered growth because it's going to take some time to do it. Anyway, now that I've touched on that, I'll just quickly touch on the game today because it was out at the Junction Oval in St Kilda, and they will be going again on Tuesday, which is the 8th. Same venue. England all out for 129, and Australia winning by 5 wickets, making 131 runs of 35.2 overs.
Quite a comfortable victory there.
And player of the match, well, really, it shouldn't come as a surprise considering this girl has dominated for Australia in 2 codes. But Elise Perry, she's taken 3 wickets and she's scored 40 runs with the bat. So that's
she's a real star, isn't she, Elise Perry? Yep.
Yeah, fabulous.
So 40 off 64 with the bat before she was run out by Kate Cross, who is pretty much becoming the James Anderson of the women's team, if you ask my opinion. And then with the ball, she had 7 overs, 3 wickets taken, 12 runs conceded, an economy rate of 1.71. Now, really, if that's not a day out, ladies and gentlemen, then you need to tell me what is, because that's a great performance by Perry.
Okay, and we've also got new fixtures just came out for the Sheffield Shield and the Marsh one-day competition coming out now with all the states getting back into it again. So we'll talk about that in future programs. There's nothing to really discuss here today. And the last thing about cricket that we should probably mention is there's a under-19s World Cup going on in the West Indies, and the Australians doing reasonably well there.
Yeah, in fact, that tournament actually just wrapped up overnight. Vince, actually been won by India. They beat the English in the final.
Yes.
After England knocked off, I believe it was Afghanistan.
Yes, it was a great game. I watched that.
And we were knocked off by India in the other semi. So as a result, we had to play for the 3rd place against Afghanistan.
Yes.
Now they are no mugs, the Afghans.
I was just going to say, you know what? That country there, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. It's amazing some of these countries, such as Afghanistan, Bangladesh, they're really coming up through the ranks now, and they're no easy beats like they might have once been. They've actually got some really talented players, both batsmen and bowlers, especially the spin bowling side of things. But they've also got some pace bowlers as well that really swing the ball. And, I really enjoy watching them play the game. It's quite entertaining. But Australia, just to finish up on cricket, Australia finished 3rd by beating Afghanistan, only just. And now we've got the men's team without Justin Langer going to Pakistan for the first time in over 20 years. I think it might be 24 years. We're actually going to the country and playing tests there for the first time this century.
Yeah. And that is great because how hard a place was it to go Karachi and some of these venues, the pitches.
Rawalpindi.
The Rawalpindi Express.
I think the Australians would have much rather go to the United Arab Emirates, which became the quasi Pakistan home ground. I think it was Sharjah, I think was the name of the place. And they used to play all of their home tests there. But
pretty sterile.
I'm pretty sure the Australians would have felt more comfortable there than what they do in Pakistan, that's for sure.
No, exactly. And it's great for them, a country like us, to come back there for the first time since 98 from memory. They've been trying to get England to come over. They've been trying to get New Zealand to come over. They've got us.
Yeah.
Apparently there's been rescheduled tours for England and New Zealand to go over there.
Well, it's always been a bit of a security threat, hasn't it? I mean, it's always been cancelled or shifted for security reasons because it hasn't been safe. So hopefully it is safe. And they've taken all the precautions that they have to take. So that'll be interesting to see how some of these Australian players who have had it all their own way on home soil in the last couple of months, it'll be interesting to see how they go in a country as hostile and as volatile as Pakistan is, especially with the home crowd cheering on their Pakistani cricketers. It'll be certainly hostile territory.
Not just that, Vince, the climatic conditions and the pitches. That's the other thing. I mean, that's something that you have to. The vagaries of that is something.
Not exactly a whacker type pitch, is it, Steve, over there in Karachi?
Well, the opposite. The dust bowl.
A dust bowl, exactly. A spinner's paradise.
Absolutely. SCG.
You can imagine the spinners and how they'll turn the ball on pitches like that.
Yeah.
I think Nathan Lyon would better be fighting fit for these tests because I think he'll be used for about 70 overs per innings. Anyway, So that's enough on cricket for the time being, I think. I think we've done the Justin Langer issue to death.
Yep.
Let's move over now, because it's actually taking place as we speak, to the noble sport of golf, Stephen's specialty. We have a tournament taking place right now, a fantastic tournament, I've got to say, over there in Saudi Arabia, Stephen. Now, this is part of the Asian Tour. And we have Cameron Smith in the field. And he's the leading Australian. And he's equal sixth at the moment, about 4 shots off the lead with 7 holes to play. Can he do it, do you think?
I'm not watching it as we speak.
He's only 1 under for this round.
Yeah.
He's gone from 4 under in his first round. Then he shot another 4 under round in his second round to go to 8 under. Then he had an even par third round, and he's 1 under for this round. He's at 9 under par at the moment after 11 holes.
Yeah, look.
The leader, by the way, is Harold Varner III from America, and he's 13 under par at the moment in the lead on his own by 1 shot from a couple of other players.
It's all doable, but it's about the putter, and it's one of his strengths, no doubt. But there's a lot of other players that'll be there as well in contention. So it's going to be difficult, but look, if he can get a couple of birdies, who knows? Things can change.
And I should mention that there's another Aussie in the field. There's another couple of Aussies in the field that are doing quite well, and they're both at the moment on 5 under, about 4 shots behind Cameron Smith. And that's Wade Ormsby, who takes part in a lot of the Asian Tour tournaments. And Brad Kennedy is another one, probably not very well known to many of us, but Brad Kennedy's another Australian in the field, doing very well at 5 under par as well. So, and I shouldn't forget Lucas Herbert. Remember Lucas, we made a big deal out of after winning Bermuda. He's also in the field at 3 under at the moment.
He's also won in Dubai.
He's actually finished his round. He's finished his round at 3 under.
He also won in Dubai last year, so you could say he's a desert specialist.
So he likes being in the desert climate. So he's at the moment equal 21st on 3 under. And depending on what happens with players above him, may end up finishing in the top 20, you never know. But he'll be there or thereabouts around the top 20. But at the moment, it looks like Harold Varner, the third, on 13 under. And he's actually 2 shots now. Someone's just fallen back. Tommy Fleetwood on 11 under. Adri Arnaus on 11 under. Matthew Wolff on 10 under. Bubba Watson on 10 under. The dual US Masters champion. And then we have Cameron Smith on 9 under in 6th position. So let's hope that Cam can get the putter working well in that last 7 holes and rattle off a few birdies, maybe even an eagle on the last, the par 5, which is a daunting second shot over the water if you're game enough to try and make the green in 2. He did that yesterday. So I see no reason why he can't at least try and get an eagle on the last. That would make a hell of a difference.
Absolutely.
But, either way, Cameron Smith's just been in career best form, and you can't help but admire the guy. And I love watching him because he's got that mullet, the hair at the back. Reminds me of Craig Bradley in 1987. But anyway, let's hope that Cameron can at least finish in the top 5 and come up with another fantastic result over there in Saudi Arabia. Anything more you want to add?
No, other than it's a really strong field, and you're not just playing against the European Tour players. There's a mixture of some of the cream of the crop from the US and Europe. So any performance, a high finish there is certainly not to be sneezed at.
Now, while those players are over there in Saudi Arabia at the invitation of the Saudi government, no doubt, that lovely regime that, believes in human rights and on the Human Rights Council with the United Nations. Anyway, we have another tournament taking place at beautiful Pebble Beach, my favourite golf course in the USA.
Absolutely.
What a magnificent golf course this is. And guess who's right up there in the top 10? Also, with 1 round to go that should start probably in the early hours of tomorrow morning. After 3 rounds, he is 11 under in a tie for 8th, only 4 shots behind the lead. Who am I talking about?
Tie for 8th, 4 strokes behind the lead. You're talking about Jason Day. Now, you wouldn't have been speaking about. You wouldn't have thought that you'd be speaking about him a few weeks ago because he did have a bit of a form slump, but he seems to have got his body right now, and
I think it's fantastic.
He's playing pain-free. He's always had. He hasn't been the. He hasn't had the best luck with injury. Put it this way, right? His back
has been giving him a lot of problems.
Yeah, he's had challenges with his wrist as well in the past and other areas. So it seems like he's pretty fit. He's managing his schedule as well, playing his load of how many tournaments he plays in a row, etc. And I think I think Jason Day, potentially could contend again in majors coming up this year.
Well, I think he's not beyond the realms of pulling off this victory either. He's 4 shots behind. Now there's three other players who are leading on 15 under at the moment, and then there's another 3 on 14 under, including Jordan Spieth, who rattled off a 63 yesterday. I think that might have been a 9 under score at Pebble Beach. That's a fantastic achievement. But and there's another player on 13 under. So Jason's in a tie for 8th with one other player on 11 under. He's only 4 shots behind. So if he can get his round off to a really good start tomorrow morning, our time, which will be Sunday afternoon in California, hopefully he can get off to a good start, get a few birdies early, and get right up there towards the top of the leaderboard. And I think he's got a really fighting chance to pull this off. Even if he got into a playoff, I'd back him to win something like that.
So Pebble's the sort of course where you certainly can make birdies, but you can also make bogeys. It seems easier than what it is. And because it's a bit of a tease. There are shorter holes where certainly you'd be rewarded, but then with the slopes and undulations and some of the greens, obviously also the rough and water. If you're not precise, you'll pay the penalty and make bogey.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
So you can certainly shoot really, really low at Pebble Beach, but you could quite easily have a poor score. So 4 strokes sounds a lot.
If you get those challenging shots right, you'll be very well rewarded. But if you get them wrong, you'll be just as easily punished.
You only have to look at 18. Where you potentially, if you
that big sand belt bunker along the left hand side, just where the ocean hits the rocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
If you flirt there on with that bunker and you try and take the shortcut, you could definitely possibly get on for 2. But
that's the longest bunker I've ever seen in my life, that bunker.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. That
it must go for about, I don't know, it must go for about 700 or 800 metres.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, that's just one of the holes, right? There's lots of holes that you can do that on. So 4 strokes is nothing in the scheme of things.
Well, let's hope that Jason can do it. Cameron Smith's fighting. He's only 4 shots behind over there in Saudi Arabia. So we've got 2 top-class Australian golfers, both only 4 shots behind the pace. Let's hope that they can, at least one of them can win. And if not, let's hope they can both get into the top 5 and benefit from having a top 5 finish, both financially and also from a points point of view with their relevant competitions that they take part in. And there's also, we should mention the ladies tournament that just finished at Fort Myers in Florida, the LPGA Drive-On Championship. That was won by Leona Maguire from Ireland. Fantastic performance, 18 under par over 3 rounds, because, of course, the ladies only do the 3 rounds, not 4. And from what I could, 3-shot victory, pretty comfortable win in the end. And I noticed that the top-ranked Australian, Sue O, who we spoke about a couple of weeks ago when she won in Brisbane.
Absolutely. Yeah, great player.
She was there tied for 41st on 5 under. So she was 13 shots behind the winner, never really in contention. But she had a reasonably good performance, obviously made the cut. And, an encouraging effort on her behalf. Do you ever watch the ladies' golf? I must say I really enjoy it. Now, I mentioned before about ladies' cricket being better than ladies' AFL. Well, ladies' golf is another step up again. The girls are absolutely amazing how they play the game of golf. Some of them are just absolutely brilliant. Do you remember Peter Corder, the tennis player who actually won a Grand Slam here at the Australian Open? Well, he's got a couple of daughters who both play golf. One of them is actually number 1 in the world.
They're better golfers than he was a tennis player, if you want to talk about it that way.
Yeah. Yes, and his daughters go brilliantly well in golf. And also, I should mention, how brilliant the New Zealander Lydia Ko. She actually won last weekend a tournament over there in the USA. So, back to winning form for Lydia Ko. It's great to see. She's probably the top ranked Australasian golfer, if I can lay claim to her as being an Australasian, even though she's from New Zealand. She's
the most talented out of all, even on the whole tour. The problem she's had,
sure.
she's had so much pressure on her. She was a prodigy, 13, 14-year-old prodigy that had the equivalent to Tiger Woods, essentially, had the weight of New Zealand and also pressure from her family on her shoulders that she was, so good and was going to be a star.
Correct.
And they get burnt out pretty young. That's always the challenge. With these players, as good as talented as they are. But now she's sort of gone through that stage and she's coming through the other side and starting to enjoy her golf again, which is great.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, when it comes to the quarter girls, they probably have pressure on them as well because of their father being a tennis player who won a major tournament. In fact, Jessica Quarter withdrew from that tournament that I just mentioned before. I think she might have got injured at some point, but anyway, her sister Nelly, I think, isn't it?
Nelly Quarter.
Yeah, Nelly Quarter. She's number 1 in the world. She finished on 10 under, some 8 shots behind, but again, can't keep her out of the game for too long. She was struggling around about even par at one stage, but all of a sudden she's 10 under, so she's very good at what she does. Great to see the girls in action. I really enjoy watching them play. And one of my favourites is also the Canadian Brooke Henderson. She finished also in a tie for 11th in that particular tournament. So, great to watch the girls play golf. Okay, one other golf tournament, Steve, and it took place right here in Victoria. Do you know where I'm talking about? Finished up today?
Yes, I do. You tell me about it.
You want to tell us about it?
I haven't got the scores in front of me, Vince. I'm sorry. Do you want?
Neither have I. All I know is it was at Rosebud. It was at the Rosebud Country Club.
Yeah, the Jeff Ogilvy Rosebud.
Jeff Ogilvy one. Yes.
Yeah, promoting that. He's done a great job coming back to Melbourne and really promoting the tour down here. I don't have the scores in front of me, unfortunately.
No problems. It was a great tournament. The guy that was in front by a good 3 shots with about 4 holes to go ended up capitulating on the 15th, 16th and 17th holes and bogeyed them. And in the end, another young boy who was coming back from injury ended up winning. I'm trying to think of his name now. I can't quite remember, but ended up winning by a shot. So it was quite an emotional finish, and good on him for winning. I think the winning score was about 19 under par. I think if it wasn't 19, it might have been 20 under.
The leader was a 14. That's a great course, Rosebud, and anyone from the public can go and play there. It's got 36 holes. It's a really great golf course.
Yeah, exactly. All right, enough on golf for 1 week. let's proceed to soccer.
Yes.
And there were some FA Cup games last night. And
Oh,
there's going to be some more tonight. And finally, Everton finally have a win. We've got a new manager, former Chelsea champion Frank Lampard is the new Everton manager. They sacked the former Liverpool manager Rafa Benitez. That was never going to work. That was like trying to mix oil and water. And
let's put it
they
this way.
sacked him. They sacked him around Christmas, I think, didn't they?
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
No, it's only a couple of weeks ago. I think I think it was only a couple of weeks ago they sacked him. But anyway, he was never going to work out, and he didn't.
managed to unite an entire city. They managed to unite an entire city against Everton because one is a former Liverpool manager, right? And Everton, as you know, Vince, been an Everton supporter yourself, we hate Liverpool. We hate them.
Yeah.
And they hate us as much as we hate them. So not only have we been united and hating him, but look, it was just never going to work. But finally, a good win by us over Brentford. We now need to be ready for the next.
Now that was the fourth round match because we beat Hull City in the third round. So that was a fourth round match. So now we're playing a fifth round match, aren't we? Or effectively best of. Are we into the last 16 or the last 32?
I think it's now last 32. But we've now got to wait for the draw on that because there are 3 games.
I thought it might have been in the last 16, to be honest.
Well, anyway, fact is we're into the next round.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 3 games, 1 taking place tonight and 2 taking place overnight tonight as well. Those games are Liverpool versus Cardiff City, Nottingham Forest versus Leicester City, and Bournemouth versus Boreham Wood.
Boreham Wood. Good old Boreham Wood, Steve. God knows where that is. Never heard of it in my life.
So the interesting part about some of these games is that it is the international window, so that the teams, some teams may be missing some of their stars, some of the Premier League giants, but nonetheless, there's certainly always some upsets like Middlesbrough defeating Manchester
United on the weekend on penalty.
In the shootout. West Ham
How
getting
good
out
was
of
that? I was wrapped.
West Ham got out of jail against Kidderminster Harriers.
Oh yes,
and that was a real David and Goliath battle. Essentially, Declan Rice equalised in the 91st minute.
120 minutes plus 1.
Yeah, unbelievable. So,
in other words, in injury time of extra time, they got the winner. It must have broken every Kidderminster heart that there was there.
And also, in just to draw, to go to extra time, it was the 91st minute, they scored the equaliser. So Kidderminster are thinking, this is great for the coffers. We've now got West Ham.
Harriers.
Yeah, that's right. We've got West Ham playing here. We've got the TV. We've got all the food we're going to sell, all the tickets, everything, the publicity. It's going to be huge for us as a club. That'll allow us to buy a couple of players next year, potentially, and then maybe go up a division if we're successful enough. That'd be a real fillip for them.
Well, the official attendance at the Agborough Stadium at Kidderminster was 5,327 people.
That'd be a record.
And Kidderminster got the first goal of the game after 19 minutes through Alexander Penny. And get a load of this, Beachy. They were in front 1-0 for the rest of the match until the 91st minute. So 1 minute into injury time, Declan Rice gets the equaliser.
Yep.
So then they have to play extra time because it finished 1-1. They played 30 minutes of extra time, and yet again, 1 minute into injury time of extra time, Jared Bowen kicks a goal for West Ham and wins the match for West Ham.
So it could have gone to
saves
pens.
David Moyes' bacon. because former Everton manager David Moyes actually manages West Ham these days.
Correct.
And that would have been a horribly embarrassing loss if they had lost that match.
So Kidderminster dare to dream, right? They thought going into it they couldn't win, but the windfall of having this game's fantastic for them. Then they're being teased to think you may even go into the next round.
Yeah.
They're pinching themselves, and then they break their hearts twice.
Yeah, that's going to hurt. That will hurt.
Other teams that would have been daring to dream, unfortunately, had their dreams shattered, such as Plymouth Argyle, who lost 2-1 to Chelsea after, again, getting the first goal of the game, but then eventually having an equaliser, and then having to play extra time. Chelsea gets the goal after 105 minutes. So another set of hearts broken at Plymouth. Another one was Hartlepool United. Have you ever heard of Hartlepool United?
I have heard it. Yeah, they're in League Two.
They lost 2-0 away to Crystal Palace. I love some of these clubs that you've never heard of.
Yeah, sorry, Vince. I'll just cut you. I just want to cut in for a minute.
And we've still got Boreham Wood, yes, yet to play Bournemouth. So that's it.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly cut in on the Crystal Palace and that Crystal Palace game. They've actually won me over as a fan, so to speak, because one, they actually donated to the owner's wife or something along those lines, and paid for their fans or dropped the fans' tickets to go to the game. And I was actually thinking to myself, Jesus, if you're doing that for an opposition club, then you've got my respect, because I don't think many clubs would be doing that for those clubs that are in the lower tier.
Good on them. Hartlepool United, yep.
Yeah, that's what Hartlepool.
So if you're going to have a second team, consider supporting a team like that.
Yeah, because Crystal Palace actually did pretty much most of the things for Hartlepool United, which is a club in the north of England, if I am correct.
Could be right. By the way, Beachy, once we've got our final games being played, yes, we are down to 16. So round 4, which we're in the middle of, is 32 teams. So we'll be down to 16. So round 5 of the FA Cup will be down to 16. Then we'll be playing the quarterfinals when we've only got 8. And then the semi-finals when we've only got 4. And then the final, obviously, when we're down to the last 2. So, yes, Everton through to round 5, basically one of 16 teams. The other Premier League teams still in it at this stage are Chelsea, courtesy of that 2-1 win over Plymouth. West Ham, courtesy of that controversial 2-1 win over Kidderminster Harriers. Norwich City actually beat Wolves. They're having a bit of a resurgence. They're actually out of the relegation zone in the Premier League too, just quietly. So they beat Wolves. Crystal Palace beating Hartlepool United 2-0. Everton beating Brentford 4-1. A championship team in Huddersfield Town beat another championship team, Barnsley, 1-0 to go through. Manchester City beat Fulham, who's currently on top of the next league, the championship. They beat them 4-1. Peterborough United, a championship team, beat another championship team, Queen's Park Rangers 2-0, so they'll be through. Southampton 2 beat Coventry City 1. So Southampton are through. They're another Premier League team. Stoke City, probably about 4 or 5 years relegated now out of the Premier League. They've been in the Championship for a few years. They beat Wigan Athletic 2-0, so they're through. Luton Town, another Championship team, 3-0 over Cambridge United, which I think is a League 2 team.
Yep.
And so they're through. And Tottenham, 3-1 winners over Brighton and Hove Albion, another Premier League team. So Tottenham's through. So we've only got the Liverpool match with Cardiff City, Cardiff being in the championship. So you'd favour Liverpool to win that at home.
You would?
Nottingham Forest. This could be an interesting one, Beachy. Nottingham Forest, a championship team, playing a Premier League team in Leicester City at Nottingham Forest's home ground. So that'll be an interesting game. And, of course, Bournemouth, who were in the Premier League up until a couple of years ago, and then they got relegated. They're playing Boreham Wood, the totally, not even in the fourth tier, Boreham Wood. So we wish them all the best going to Bournemouth's home ground to play the Cherries over there.
Yep. In fact, I think that what I'm looking at here is that Boreham Wood are fifth in Conference Premier. So I would believe that to be one of the leagues outside of the England Football League. So this is a very, very big game for them, because if Boreham Wood take these guys out, oh boy!
Do you know? Can I just raise a topic on this, the FA Cup, and get your views on this, both of you?
Sure.
I personally believe that what would make the FA Cup even more interesting and more tantalising is if, at the moment, the way it's structured is that the Premier League teams don't even get to play until the third round. So they don't even have to play anyone in the first round and the second round. That's sort of, the first and second rounds are played between all of those other clubs that are in the lower tiers, and they sort out who gets into the top 64. I think they start off with 64, don't they? So
yeah,
because at the start of the fourth round now we had 32. So when we get to the third round and the Premier League teams play, there's 64 teams, of which 20 are Premier League teams. Okay? So what I reckon would be great, and what would really help a lot of those lowly clubs, is rather than have this, and I've watched, I don't know if you've ever watched an FA Cup draw, when they draw the balls out and they say, right, Liverpool's the first team out, and, the Kidderminster Harriers are the second team out. And they have to go to Liverpool because they got drawn out first, so they have to go to Anfield. What I think would be great is to play all of these FA Cup rounds in rounds 1, 2, and 3, and 4, maybe up until, the quarterfinals. Until you get to the quarterfinals, play them at the home grounds of these clubs.
Yeah.
And have Liverpool go out to these little grounds out there in the suburbs of England, and have Manchester United go out to, Wimbledon or whatever the case may be. So you have the lower graded club playing the higher graded club at the lower graded club's home ground every single round. Okay. Now, I know it's a little bit of an equalisation type of measure, but I think it would make for a more interesting match. And I think the atmosphere at these grounds would be absolutely sensational. And financially, it would really help a lot of those clubs.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Vince, because I don't know how much of the FFA Cup that you've watched out here, but this.
Yeah, well, I noticed Melbourne victory. That was one other thing I was going to mention to Steve later after this discussion. Melbourne victory winning last night.
Yeah, we'll touch on that. But the FFA Cup, when they do the draw, okay, so they've got the A-League teams in a separate pot, and they've got the teams that from the lower leagues, like the MPL and whatnot, they're into a different pot. Cut a long story short, if an A-League team is drawn first, but they get drawn against a team that's from the lower tier, say the MPL or whatever, automatically the team that's in the lower tier, they've got the home game straight away. That's exactly what they've been doing for the last little while. Now, say for example, South Melbourne, right? We know South Melbourne. They play at the old Lakeside Oval. So say South Melbourne was in the competition and they've been drawn against, I don't know, Sydney FC, because that's actually happened previously. South Melbourne would get the home game at Lakeside Stadium to bring the local fans into the club and the Sydney FC fans to come out And that's exactly
Yep.
what they would do. And as far as I can remember as well, I think if the local team scored a goal or whatever, then they would get money for the club to be brought
Yep.
in to help
Yep.
bring the
They stopped that.
facilities.
They stopped that.
Okay, that's disappointing because that was actually a good financial incentivization to bring more money into the club,
Yeah.
because it was one thing that they would be using as motivation to score against an A-League club, and not just that, win against them as well.
Your view, Steve? What do you think of my idea of having, the if you like, let's just go Division 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll use that for the sake of simplicity. So if you've got a fourth division club playing a Premier League or a first division club, you always have the match at the fourth division club's home ground against the Premier League team. Now, wouldn't that create a lot more interest, a lot more, especially at these little towns that have their little clubs? Wouldn't it just really liven the whole place up and create a lot of interest and intrigue?
Couldn't agree more with you, but if you reckon
taking the game to the people.
Absolutely. But if you think the AFL's about money when the finals tickets or grand finals tickets happen and that the Premier League's worse. They will schedule and I could speak to you for an hour about this. I won't bore you, but they will schedule games for TV where Bournemouth have to travel to Middlesbrough at 12 o'clock. So the fans have to leave at 3:30 in the morning to get there, right? Just because the TV needed a 12 o'clock game, right? Yeah. They will sell Manchester United.
So in other words, the on-course patronage, it's a bit like the argument I have. I have this discussion about horse racing and harness racing. They seem to have forgotten all about on-course patronage. So in a similar way with football and
they'll gouge the away fans. So they'd rather have 50,000 at Old Trafford, even though because they know that people will go to watch Man U, than have 3,000 at the local pub league team's ground. Now they should to help support that team for the romance, but there's just too much money to be made every time a game is fixtured. I'm being cynical, but it's the truth.
So has it come down to the size of the grounds and the capacity, and is that what it's about? Because I would have thought if you've still got the same TV rights going, I mean, if the game's still being televised on Sky Sports or whatever it is over there, what's the difference about where the venue is?
It's a ticket sales though. You're going to get so many thousand people. You are. Absolutely.
I just think that the actual competition, I have a feeling that the FA Cup has lost a lot of its intrigue and a lot of its romance, and what it used to be was something really worth pursuing. And nowadays, I think a lot of the managers are like, I'd rather concentrate on winning the Premier League, or rather concentrate on the Champions League and all these sorts of things.
The only time the FA Cup's relevant is if the team's going to get relegated and they've got nothing else to play for but to focus on the FA Cup. Otherwise, the general season games are the ones that they'll play their best players for. It's sad but true.
You want to know something, guys? Unbelievable timing. I'm on this app called One Football, ONE, One Football. And it gives you all of the soccer results everywhere. And then you can pick and choose the leagues that you want to get results from. They've just sent right now on my iPad a notification for the 5th round draw in the FA Cup. Even though we've still got 3 games to go, Beachy.
Yep.
This is the draw in full, right in time for our Blues. They must have known that Blue Sunday was still on air.
Go for it, mate. Let's go.
Okay, I'll quickly go through this because we've been on the air nearly 3 hours. Can you believe? Luton Town will play Chelsea at Luton. I'm happy with that.
Good. Right.
Crystal Palace, which is a Premier League team, is versus Stoke City. So Stoke, being a championship team, one rung down, have to go to Crystal Palace. I would rather see that swapped, obviously, because of what I just said earlier.
Sure.
Peterborough United, a championship team, versus Manchester City at Peterborough.
Oh, that's going to be
So that'll be a good one for their fans to go to.
Yep.
The fourth game will be Liverpool or Cardiff City, which play tonight. So whoever wins that game will have another home game versus Norwich,
Okay.
which is another Premier League team.
Sure.
So if Cardiff happen to knock off Liverpool, it'll be Cardiff City versus Norwich at Cardiff, which, by the way, is in Wales.
Yes.
If Liverpool win, well, then it's going to be back at Anfield against Norwich. The fifth game will be Southampton versus West Ham, two Premier League teams. That's fine. The sixth one is Middlesbrough, a championship side, versus Tottenham, a Premier League side. So that'll be a beauty.
Okay. Yeah.
The seventh one will be Leicester City or Nottingham Forest, whoever wins that game, which is being played at Nottingham Forest, versus Huddersfield, which is a championship team.
Okay.
And the last one, Everton home ground versus either Bournemouth or Boreham Wood. Go Boreham Wood! Go Boreham Wood!
Yeah, go Boreham Wood, all right.
And all of these ties will be played on the weekend commencing February 28th.
Okay.
So, there you go.
Fantastic.
In the week commencing February 28th, which actually is a Monday. So, that's the last day of February. So, effectively, the early days of March is when the next 8 games will be played. So, we're down to 16 teams eventually, and that's going to be the draw. So, soccer fans, there's plenty for you to look forward to there. Next week we can talk about the other leagues like La Liga and Serie A and Premier League and Bundesliga and all of them, because there's hardly been any games because of all the international matches as well as the FA Cup. Last night, Steve, the final of the FFA Cup here in Melbourne. Melbourne victory versus the Central Coast Mariners. And over to you. Tell us what happened.
Victory won 2-1. And
were you there? I know you're a big Victory fan.
Yeah, and I went, and they dominated. Mariners, really punch above their weight considering their financial spend on players and so forth. They do a lot bringing youngsters through their academy program and do a great job of doing that. They defended really, really well and frustrated Victory. So much so Victory's first goal had to come from a set piece. But at the end of the day,
wasn't until late in the game, wasn't it, that the Victory got their 2 goals?
Yeah, it was midway through the second half, and then the final goal was sort of in injury time. And then Mariners scored a consolation goal with a minute or so left to bring it to 2-1. But Victory dominated and probably deserved their victory, but Mariners put up a very good defensive effort to fight, but really didn't create a lot of any sort of clear-cut opportunities to threaten the keeper at all, outside of that late goal.
So no doubt the pro-Melbourne Victory crowd would have been in raptures at the end of it all. They would have been happy people. There wouldn't have been too many Central Coast Mariners fans coming down from the
Gosford.
It was about the town of Gosford in New South Wales.
200. There was about 200 Mariners fans there, so that bay and a half of supporters. It was a really good night. Yeah, that's all. Yep. So it was a really good night, and I think hats off to the FFA. I'll explain. Last time it was an FFA Cup final when Victory won, 2016. Tickets were like $50 each. They learned their lesson. They only got a crowd of 15,000 that night. This year, they obviously with COVID and so forth, the crowd of 15,500 as well, but considerably more considering the times that we're in now with crowds. Tickets were only $30 for adults. So they learned their lesson. They didn't gouge the patron, and they got a decent crowd, which was good.
Oh, it's good. Very good. So they had it at Amy Park.
Yep, Melbourne Rectangular Stadium, as they So
yes, the old Olympic Park.
that's it.
So good result for Melbourne victory there, and they've had a vastly improved year, haven't they, in the A-League? They're sitting up there in the top 3, I think.
Yeah, the problem with the A-League, no different to the AFLW or even some of the Big Bash cricket, was that some teams have played 11 games, some have played 7. You know, so it's
a mishmash.
MacArthur,
It's hard to know where everyone's at.
Yeah, like MacArthur were leading the league just after Christmas, and their first game was last week, and they said they've lost any momentum and lost games as well to top it off. So
very, very hard, isn't it?
Very difficult for the coaches.
Yeah. I'll just quickly touch on this as well.
Sorry, Richie, where you go?
I was just going to touch on this as well. There was more incentivise for the winning the FFA Cup as well, because the winner of that has now got a chance to qualify for the Asian Champions League, which Melbourne Victory has at the present time. Now, they will have to travel to Japan to face Vissel Kobe. So once they get through that, or if they get through that by winning it, well, then they're into the group stage, and then it's all new ball game from there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, last Champions League campaign, Victory actually went through that qualification. So finishing third, they had to go through that long qualification process, and actually did get through beating a team in Korea and got through the quarterfinals actually. So look, it's an opportunity for them, and great incentive.
Yes.
Indeed. All right. That wraps up the world of soccer for the time being. I just want to finish off on one of my favourite sports, and hopefully we've been educating a few other people about it. It was effectively the Melbourne Cup in this particular sport last night, and I speak, of course, of harness racing, where we had the running of the AG Hunter Cup at Melton. And look, I'd love to say it was a great race, but effectively the favourite, King of Swing, was drawn in barrier 1. The problem with races like this is that there are random barrier draws, and quite often, you know, if one of the best horses in the field draws barrier 1, it becomes a fait accompli. But anyway, you actually got some reasonable value on King of Swing last night. It did draw barrier 1, and it paid $2.40 in winning the race last night, $2.20 on the fixed odds. But it led. It was never challenged for the lead at the start of the race over the 2,760-metre distance. Its main danger, or regarded as its main danger, was Lochinvar Art, last year's winner of the Hunter Cup. In fact, King of Swing won the year before that. So King of Swing had won the 2020 Hunter Cup. Lochinvar Art won the 2021 Hunter Cup. And here they were going head-to-head in the 2022 Hunter Cup. King of Swing was in the lead. Lochinvar Art came around all the horses and sat in the position outside the leader for the majority of the race. And unfortunately for him, he tired in the straight, which is not surprising to me, over the 2,760-metre journey. And probably my new favourite horse, Spirit of St. Louis, which had won the Bendigo, Shepparton and Ballarat Cups, was sitting in the one out and one back trail. Steve, you know what that's all about.
One by one,
one wide line, but only one horse behind the one in front of him. And he came out in the straight and tried to make ground on King of Swing, but just failed to do so, and finished a very creditable second. The horse behind the leader, Amazing Dream, which was the only mare in the race, a very good mare at that, which drew gate 8, followed King of Swing for the entire race, and I expected it to make some ground on the sprint lane in the home straight, but unfortunately she didn't. She ended up finishing third, and a 150-1 shot that was 3 back on the fence, took all the shortcuts, ran into fourth, Mac Dan. So the odds were $2.40 and $1.10 for King of Swing, $1.80 for the place on Spirit of St. Louis, $1.60 for the place on Amazing Dream. Mac Dan ran fourth, put a bit of value into the first 4, which paid $280 odd. So an uneventful race. Did the best horse win the race? Certainly King of Swing. I've hardly ever seen it lose a race when it leads, and that's why I had a little bit of my hard earned on it. But so I was quite happy with the result. But I've got to say, as a spectacle, I've seen better races.
Yeah.
So that was the Hunter Cup last night. The night before that, we had the All Trot meeting, which was what's called the Great Southern Star, and that's the richest trotters race here in Australia. In fact, probably in the Southern Hemisphere. And it was what they do there, by the way, guys, is that they have 2 heats early in the night. So races 3 and 4 were 2 heats of the Great Southern Star. And there's like 10 horses in each of those heats. And then the top 8 get a run in the final. The top 8, as in the first 4 in one, the first 4 in the other. So the final was race 9 on the program. And it was won by, yet again, Kate Gath and her husband Andy Gath on Majestuoso at $2.50 and $1.20. It was favourite. Beat Wobbly number 1, which followed it pretty much all the way, $1.70. I'm Ready Jet, which is the one I reckon you should follow out of the whole series. He was drawn in 10 outside the front row. And stormed home at $1.50 for the place as well. So, again, pretty much the 3 favourites in each of the Hunter Cup and the Great Southern Star. They were the ones that came in first, second and third. No surprises there. So we'll take a break from harness racing on this show from now on. I don't think we'll talk about it too much from now on. And there is our Grand Poobah coming in to say, you guys have run out of time. You've been going for 3 hours.
No, I'm just.
I'm sick and tired of hearing your voices.
No, I've just finished the class, and I'm thinking I might start watching it. And I'm log on, and you're still going. Vince.
We're still going, Joe. It's great to see you, my friend.
Are you giving a political speech or something?
No. I was just giving everyone a 3 or 4 minute summary on what happened on the biggest day of harness racing yesterday.
Was that the Hunter Cup?
The Hunter Cup, which was also the day after the biggest day in trotting, which is the Great Southern Star the night before.
Yeah. So I'll be interested. I'll go home and watch the show tonight over dinner, but I'll be interested in Mr. Beach's view on the treatment of Justin Langer.
Joe, be a long dinner you're going to be having.
It'd be a long dinner. I don't think you get Beach's view on that until about the 2 hour 20 mark.
Brace yourself, Joe. I unload. And Vince and Steve can...
I've never heard Beachy use the F-bomb like that on a show like this ever before.
Oh, Beachy. I'm gutted. You're Mr. Perfect. We're normally the ones that drop the F-bomb.
Well, he certainly got fired up about the treatment of Justin Langer. So, and he made his points very well and very succinctly, I can tell you.
You might need a 3-week suspension.
I'll give you the warning now.
So, listen, I'll be interested about whether people think that Daniel Harford will get the usual Carlton treatment, whether, next week you'll get the...
Who knows?
Well, who knows? Well, why don't we ring up Leo Sayer? Is he in charge of them as well? Or is Leo Sayer non-binary?
Well, Joe, tell us very briefly, how are things up there in Bangkok in Thailand? You've got the big government contract. We miss you on this show. We love having you here to give us a bit of comic relief now and then.
There is. Keep this under your hat. There might be a bigger contract coming. I'll tell you tomorrow in confidence.
No worries.
But yeah, no. We're like you guys. We're suffering a lot from COVID, because the country here really, really relies on tourism. And the government have made it really hard for people to come in. And same with like the Australian government. Like I've got people here who can't get to Australia because of the quarantine laws, or they're not giving business travellers the entry and stuff like that. So, I mean, until the world becomes a bit more normal, I think we're all going to be in a bit of strife. But
it's okay, Joe. They'll let 80,000 people into the MCG for round one. That's all right.
No, that's the main thing. At least I can come back. I might come back for that. I'll be 80,001. How's that?
Joe,
I'll buy the 80,001 ticket.
Joe, you won't be able to attend the AGM though. It'll have to be done online, just for your benefit.
When have we got a date for that?
Feb 22nd, Joe.
Oh yeah, I'm busy that night. I'm organising my Merkin draw. You know what a Merkin is?
No.
Tell us.
It's a pubic hair wig that they use in porn films.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, at the 3-hour mark, I can say that.
Right, I think it's time to wrap up the show, everybody.
All right.
I think so.
All right, Joe. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Take care, Vince. I'll give you a call tomorrow, mate.
No problems.
I might even give you a call when I get home.
No problems.
All right. See you, boys.
Good on you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Good on you.
And Beachy, thanks again to you for being a loyal servant over there in the Bat Cave, over there at Gotham City. We really appreciate all of your help when you've come on the show and helped us out with that. We understand that you got some commitments and probably won't be able to do it too often in the future, but hopefully we can get you back now and then to give us a few comments on cricket or any other sports that you're passionate about. And Steve, thanks once again for all of your time and expertise and for sharing your opinions and your views on all sorts of matters. And thank you to you out there, our viewers, for watching. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We always appreciate your comments and your feedback. As I said earlier, if you can give us a like and a share and a subscribe on YouTube or on our Facebook page in the blue corner, we'd really appreciate it. And we hope you enjoyed the show once again this week. Only another 7 days to go before we do it all again at 8 p.m. next Sunday night for another episode of Blue Sunday. Until then, good night, everyone.
Thanks, guys.